Hi, welcome to the Squad Games podcast. Typically, we talk a lot about Kill Team. Today, we're going to be talking about Hobby.
Yeah.
You have to do Hobby to play Kill Team. You have to do Hobby to play D&D, and, well, not necessarily. But any miniature game, typically, you want to know things. And today, we have Aiden as our guest.
Hey, it's that guy.
Yeah,
That's
he won
me.
Hobby Track last year. So, and then Giacomo's always been a top contender, except he refuses to compete.
Yeah. I'm behind the scenes now.
Yeah.
BTS,
Get a load of
baby.
this guy.
So, first things first, LVO is coming up this year. If you guys want to go, make sure you grab your tickets. The link will be in the description below. That is the Las Vegas Open. I believe it's January 19th through the 21st, something like that. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3-day tournament, and we're going to be the hosts. It is the largest Kill Team event in the world. So if you guys are looking to go to that, awesome. If you're not, maybe you should come just for the hobby portion, because we're going to have a lot of great hobbyists and a lot of great hobby stuff there. It's going to be amazing. You can just show up too. You can just buy a ticket from Frontline Gaming and grab it there too. These are Aiden's display boards. This is Giacomo's. Just a little piece of metal.
Got him.
Got him. So Aiden, one of our favorite competitive painters, from Squad Games and in our tournaments. He's insane because almost every tournament he comes with a brand new Kill Team, fully painted. And I'm like, how do you have time?
Does he do like the hyperbolic time chamber? What are you doing, dude?
I work from home, so if my boss is watching, I'm 100% focused all day long. But if my boss isn't watching, then I just rotate my chair 90 degrees to the paint desk.
And if his boss is watching, he only does it during non-work hours.
Exactly.
Lunch
during
breaks.
my lunch break or my 2 10-minute breaks, I'm legally allotted.
Yeah,
California.
exactly.
By California state law. Yes, exactly.
This is mine. I'm going to bring this to Worlds, so it's going to be exciting. And we have a different podcast where we talk about competitive display boards. So if you guys want to learn more about that or how you should lay out a display, that is also something that you can go check out.
Definitely watch it. That was a great.
Yeah.
That was a great watch.
It's
Some of
our
the boards
least
were awesome.
It's our least viewed episode,
No
and that's
way.
okay. Yeah,
But
it's
I think
okay.
it has the
they were
most amount of
great.
knowledge for hobbyists.
Yeah.
like
Especially
in
watch it.
understanding.
Yeah.
I will say, watch that one as a video.
Yeah, you need the visuals.
I will say, I don't know who's listening to that on Spotify. You will see nothing. You have to watch it as a video.
And again,
There's
that's under squad_games_entertainment, or you just look up Squad Games on YouTube and you'll find it.
Yeah. So today we're actually going to be bringing something very different to us. We also run a show called Hobby Highlander.
Ooh.
And Hobby Highlander is one of my pet projects, mine and G's favorite thing that we do. And it's where we blindly test a bunch of paints so that you don't have to. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about what our favorite brands of paint is. Now, we've recorded 9 episodes, so we're not going to give anything away. We have blue, yellow, red, and War Paints Fanatic versus the rest of the Hobby Highlander series. Those episodes are still yet to be released. So we're not going to spoil them, but we might reference like, oh, Monument's done really well. Monument won one of the categories, you know?
Which one?
Yeah. Or at least they've placed, because so far in the series, Monument hasn't done so well. Which is super surprising considering we've done white. Now, I did rank Monument white as my favorite paint in the white episode, even though I didn't think Monument white was the best white. Giacomo in that episode, his favorite white paint is Monument white, and he ranked it so badly it didn't even get the top 3.
You
So-
betrayed them.
I have to add a thing now that it's been time. I was using my Monument White recently. It chunked up. I don't know what happened because none of the other Monument paints I own from that same time have chunked up like this. So maybe I put it somewhere wrong, but it's been in the same place since I've had
How
it.
bad did it chunk up? Was it like Corax white
Like,
levels of
No,
chunk?
I don't know what happened, but
Cottage
it became
cheese
it
style?
became like a cottage cheese coming out of like the
That's
place
gross.
where it extrudes.
Gross.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Oh, and it's out
so
of
I gotta
the
get a new
nozzle,
one.
too.
Yeah, so
Oh.
it's like I gotta figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Anyways,
So interesting thing. I know we got a lot of blowback on the white episode in particular, right?
it's controversial.
Because GW placed in the top 3, right? And a lot of people hate GW white, and I think it's specifically because of a lot of propaganda that a lot of people put out there, but also, GW white isn't the best white. And in fact, it was nowhere near the number 1 paint that we tested.
Oh yeah.
I would say that Monument for me was a lot closer to the number 1 paint than Duncan Rhodes Too Thin Coats, right? That did win the white episode. Spoiler. But there is a lot of, I think like if you only watch to this part in the show, my personal philosophy and my personal opinion is that there isn't a singular best brand of paint. When we're doing the show, everything that we've tested, different brands have been winning different paint challenges, right? The problem is that not everyone can find every paint that's near them. Not everyone wants to give their money to Amazon, or maybe you live in a different country. So the point of this is to talk about a bunch of paint brands that we've had experience with and a general consensus of like, what is the best, if you were just going to buy one brand of paint, what paint brand would you buy? And and it's all subjective. So I think that we would really, Aiden is almost our control because from all the testing that me and Giacomo have done, we have a lot of experience with every paint brand, and I don't think Aiden has.
I've experienced with a decent amount. Most of the paints I have in my like paint drawer are just miscellaneous paints from every possible brand.
That's
like,
fair.
I got a ton in there.
Okay.
So
But now remember, his favorite black is...
it's like Art Deco
Wow.
black. I will say
Black
I've been
gloss
using
enamel.
I think it's flat
No,
black
not-
enamel.
yeah, flat
It's
black
like
enamel.
flat
Yeah.
like boiler black or something.
Uh-huh.
I say you have to thin it a lot, but it works really well. I usually like to black line almost like panel line my miniatures, and it works really well for that because it can thin down and it has such a thick pigment to it because it's meant to be like globbed onto as like children's art projects. But it thins down really well to go into crevices if you put it in with like a paint thinner, which is what I usually use it for. But I have been using the War Paint Fanatics black recently.
Okay.
And I like it a lot.
Yeah,
but
this is a great
maybe
black.
that's just because it's the first time I've used like an actual black paint in like 7 years.
Yeah, buy a
because I
real
have
color,
had a
dude.
bottle. Yeah, I've had a bottle about like the size of this can here of this craft store
He's
black
not letting
paint
it go
I've
to
been using
waste.
for like years. Yeah, I've been enjoying the War Paint Fanatic Black.
Yeah.
I have a couple other of their paints.
You guys will have to see if War Paint Fanatic Black can dethrone the current black champion that we tested in our most recent Hobby Highlander episode, which we tested 6 of them against each other, and the War Paint Fanatic episode is coming up very soon.
I'm excited to see that one.
Yeah, that's 6 War Paint Fanatic paints versus the 6 Hobby Highlanders to see if War Paint can take away the throne from any of the other colors. So it'll be good. It'll be good. And also, like when we're doing the show, sometimes it's hard to match the colors. Firstly, I'm colorblind or color deficient, but so is Aiden.
Yeah,
I'm also
only 1/3
colorblind.
So-
of here can see the whole spectrum of color.
So, but that doesn't stop Aiden from painting beautiful models.
Give a shout out to my wife who tells me the color of the paint when I buy it, so I know what it's good for, and who will correct me if the paint color is wrong.
I kind of
Yes.
want someone to sabotage and be like, "Oh, that's the right color you need," and then you come in with this thing that's completely different.
Yeah,
No, she wouldn't do that to you.
Some of my buddies would have for sure done that in the past. There's no way they haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough, and you're like, man,
So
can't
this
believe I did that.
So this episode is mostly going to be maybe not the most advanced that somebody would be like, unless if they're just looking for each of our opinions. But like if you're a beginner, it'll be a really good in-depth look at different paint brands and what we've thought about our total usage of them. And maybe it'll change in 6 months, when we test more stuff, because something else that we've been doing is, I want to shout out Duncan Rhodes, Too Thin Coats from Atlantis Games. I met them at Nova.
Hell yeah.
And they really liked our white episode. I wonder why.
Did they really?
They did. And they
So
also
it was their favorite one.
Yeah, they also shouted out that like they really wish that we would have tested a different silver than the silver that we did for them, because I think they have a different silver paint
That they really like.
that is better than the one that we tested for them. I think we did.
Maybe you tested like one that's meant to be like a layer
We
paint.
did like the sword silver, broadsword silver, or something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
I think it was like we're supposed to do surcoats or something like
Right,
that.
it's a different one.
So
They
we'll
demanded a redo.
So we'll go back and test other paints and stuff like that. But not every paint brand has been as like, they just like it because it's entertaining, right? Like,
there you go.
it is just subjective, but I've painted since I was 10. I'm 34, so 24 years of painting, right? Atlantis Games sent us all of their paints for the first two.
Sweet.
So they said we can either give these out as prizes, or we could use them for the channel. This means that it's like a lot less, because we have to spend a lot of money.
Which is, so thank you. When,
Paints are
when
not
donated,
inexpensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still probably going, and AK Interactive has sent us, I
Stuff
think,
as well,
some
yeah.
some
Their,
third generation,
intense color lines.
all of their inks and some of their deep shades, and then they sent us the apron that I wear.
Yes. And you think you got a cup, right?
And a cup, yeah.
Yeah, we got
But
cups
I don't think any other brand has reached out or anything like that. But also, I do buy still every single paint
That we're
for
using.
Hobby Highlander, right? Because and it's blind, so it's even if I wanted to be subjective, I want AK White to win. I'm just gonna.
Turns out it was this.
Yeah, I'm just gonna talk shit about it.
Yep, and there we go. Like it happens, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, but so that's a fun series. If you guys like blind painting shows or reviews, check it out. But today we're not doing that. The thing that I've wanted to do with Giacomo, I talked to him recently about it, was I wanted to do a lot more hobby stuff so we can like build boards on the channel and do it a little bit different way than you might see other people on YouTube do. So if you guys are looking for paint videos, if you guys are looking for terrain videos, hopefully we'll be doing that here quite soon. So make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, you know what? Just keep listening, because not every single episode will be us showing off models.
That 5-star rating. And here, you can still listen to an opinion as to why a paint is good. So it works.
Correct.
If Siege Studio can have a podcast about painting and you're listening to it, we can too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then our main focus is on Warhammer 40K.
Specifically Kill Team.
Kill Team. And also maybe in the future, Lord of the Rings, because I am a Lord of the Rings nerve. Shout out to Minas Tirith.
Yeah,
and
there
Rivendell.
we go.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Let's go.
So I would play Rohan.
For Gondor. Huh?
I like Rohan, so I'd play
Yeah,
Rohan.
you can paint all the brown horses you want, because
Hell
I
yeah.
don't like painting brown.
That's cool.
'Cause I can't
do.
see it.
I had to
My
do that
wife-
for an
You know,
elf
that's
commission.
fair.
Dude, my wife today, she just bought like brand new like chairs, and she bought me a brand new bag. This bag right here.
He's going in.
He's going for the bag.
This little leather.
It is
little
pretty cool,
side-
though.
Side
It is
satchel,
pretty
right?
Side satchel.
But the chair is the exact same color as this. So I had it on the table, right? Because this is obviously two different colors, right? Even to a colorblind guy. And she puts it on the chair, which is the same color. It might not be the same color, but it's the same color to me. And I'm like, babe,
Chair was probably green.
where is my bag? And she's like, am I your keeper? And I was like, I don't know. It was on the table. She was like, I put it on the chair. I was like, oh, where I can't see it? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, that's why I asked, because I couldn't see it. It was funny.
It's invisible.
It became invisible.
She's got you.
She got me. I'm going to turn down my phone just in case something happens. Okay.
There you go.
So let's dive. So one of the things that I wanted to do on the channel specifically was, since now we have every single paint from Duncan, we have basically every paint from Games Workshop. We have a lot of paints from many other paint ranges, right? Vallejo, all this kinds of stuff. We are going to, me and Giacomo are each going to paint an entire team with one specific paint range. There might be some paints that we can't find that we have to like substitute or something like that, right?
Okay.
But Giacomo's already completed the very first team in the challenge, right? And that would be these Night Lords.
Would be these guys right here.
Which you can't see, but that's okay. These
We'll
Night
have,
Lords.
photos on our Instagram so you can take a closer look.
Yeah, they are amazingly painted.
They're beautiful.
Thank you.
They're absolutely beautiful. And he painted them all with Monument. From Monument Primer all the way to Monument.
Even the primer?
Yeah.
You maniac.
All the way to Monument.
Almost. I had to use Vallejo because at the time I could not get the Monument primer or the varnish.
Oh, the varnish? So you used Vallejo varnish.
I had to use the Vallejo varnish.
Gotcha.
Because I could not get the other one. Like everywhere I was trying to order was either sold out and none of the stores locally had it.
See, that's one of the problems. That's something that we will, if we
Address.
find a problem with some sort of a paint or something like that. Now, also, Monument has some amazing colors.
Absolutely.
Right? They definitely do. And I think that your experience definitely helped with using so many good colors from their range,
Yes.
right? You used a lot of the blues, the reds, the golds on this particular, and blacks on this particular, right? There's been a couple paints that we've really disliked, right? From Monument. But I think that happens with most paint ranges. But the question is there a singular paint range that a beginner could just buy and know that every paint is going to work?
Now
That's what we're here to answer, right? If you just want to be a stan of a specific company,
hell yeah.
you know, like if you don't want to know, oh, I have to buy AK Black, I have to buy this, I have to buy that, I have to buy this. Dang it, I ran out of this one, and you know, like instead of having to do that kind of stuff, or you know, the big scandal with Games Workshop right now changing their paints without anyone knowing, right? And how are they changing them?
This is news to me.
Really?
Yeah, really?
Really? The wash
I don't.
was
I'm
the
gonna
first
be honest.
thing.
I don't really use GW paints. I only use like 3 colors. I use what is it? Retributor armor.
Okay, solid.
Rips. I use
Solid
lead
colors.
belcher.
Okay.
Which also rips. And then I also use corn red.
Corn red's
which
beautiful.
is a great. I haven't found a better like dark, deep red than corn red. But those are probably the only 3 I use, and I think I've had the same 3 pots of those 3 paints.
You'll have to watch our red episode to see if. Well, we don't use corn red.
Because that's more of a deeper
It's
red.
a deeper
We-
red.
So that's,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
a different
yeah.
competition.
We used a Mephiston red. One thing that
You got any P3 reds in there?
no, but
No.
when
It's coming out new.
We'll
When-
explain why.
P3's coming out. They're
Yeah.
dropping the new
Kickstarter.
Kickstarter,
Yes.
which I should have backed, but
You'll
Too
back
late
with
now.
your wallet when it comes out.
I will back my wallet. They're putting them in dropper bottles finally. They're not in their cursed little.
Do they
Pop
come
tops?
with, they come with magnets now, right? Like they have the holes to put in for the War Machine stuff.
Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
they're magnetized
Yeah, I've
now.
only painted 1 new War Machine model. It was pretty sick. It was.
Dang,
It was.
you
I,
didn't
it
bring
was.
it
It was the only Scorn model they released since I.
there
played
are
Scorn
some
back in the day.
amazing P3 paints, and I'm worried they're gonna ruin them,
I'll be
or
very sad.
or we're gonna, or that they're just gonna be
Dominant.
Maybe they'll be better. You know,
Yeah.
like. I'm excited to give P3 a big, because some of my favorite paints are from the P3 range.
Yeah.
Just like I think Ninjon has a couple free paints from there. Squidmar and a couple other channels have done things on like GW changing their paint without telling anyone. So like sometimes you'll have like an old corn red and then you buy a new corn red and it looks lighter. They dry very similarly. If you look at, if there's another great painter who does similar stuff to us, I love his work. Tale of Painters. I followed his blog spot for years. He commented on one of our posts.
He's in Hamburg, right?
Yeah.
Hamburg, Germany. Is that Germany?
Yeah,
Wow.
and I fangirled out. I called Giacomo immediately.
Yeah, he did.
I did.
And which I get.
I was like,
'cause
oh!
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
he does some great stuff. He has a specific video on it where he does like old paint compared to new paint, and they look way different wet, and then they dry very similarly.
Interesting.
I was talking to the guy from Artist Opus. I can't. My brain is farting right now.
Oh no.
Brent.
We'll cut it in during editing.
Yeah. I was talking to him and I was discussing about paints with him, right? Because he has beautiful paintbrushes. Those are Giacomo's favorite
I love
paintbrushes.
Artist Opus.
Yeah. Artist
Yeah,
Opus
they're great.
paintbrushes are his favorite, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I sat down with him after one of the days at Nova and I just talked to him for like 40 minutes about paints. And It's interesting because sometimes me and Giacomo will say is a bad paint because it doesn't cover well, actually could be a high quality paint because it has so much pigment and it's pure and it doesn't have any additives. The additives are what provide coverage or extra chemicals for stopping it from rotting and doing all that kind of stuff. Certain pigments and stuff. When you start, the paint ranges these days are going for really heavily going after coverage, right? And when you go after coverage, you have to add more and more and more chemicals, or you have to add white pigment, which desaturates the color
naturally.
But if you're just putting like pure cadmium into a yellow paint, it's obviously going to perform a lot worse than something that might have some additives in it. But does that mean that if it's a pure paint, is it better? So I think that a lot of companies are trying to figure out what they want to add into their paint, what chemicals and stuff they want to add in order to get the best, purest paint compared to the paint with the best coverage. Right? Because you can put pigment into paint for days, but it might, if you put more pigment, it's going to lose it's going to lose something else. So it's a
like
chemistry.
A slider.
It's
okay.
Every paint is chemistry, and a bunch of paints are just, people are just figuring out different chemistries. And what does somebody like to paint with the most? Like for Scale 75, particularly, I'm not the biggest fan of Scale 75.
Right.
I haven't tried their metallics, which we will try their metallics. We got tons of those comments on our metallic videos.
We listen, guys.
We do. It just takes us forever to edit.
Yep.
But we Scale 75 in particular, I'm not the biggest fan of because they have a little bit of a gel medium.
Right.
Oh, interesting. I've never used Scale 75. That's interesting.
It's usually, I think, where you have to shake it like to hell and back.
Yeah.
Oh.
But you have Sorestro, who is like the biggest Patreon guy out there.
Stuff.
And that's all he uses. And he paints phenomenally.
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
Following his journey from where he started with like doing just FFG games and then like now doing all the individual models is like
Star Wars, Marvel.
Literally that. He's an AMG fan.
He's who I watched to like.
That's where I first learned stuff from him,
I've been trying recently to paint better NMM. He's who I watched to like get the basics of NMM down. I didn't know he uses
a lot of Scale 75.
That makes sense.
And it's a different mixture than what we would typically use. But also like my journey with oil paints started a couple of years ago and enamels and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like learning and becoming a better painter every time you paint, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the thing is like every single paint range is different. Mm-hmm. Every single manufacturer is different from what I know of, right? Like Army Painter does everything in house. You have Monument who does the same thing. You have P3 coming out. Who knows where their stuff's getting manufactured? Right. You have AK, you have Vallejo, you have GW. And like, obviously we all have our favorite biasms in paint. Like I have my favorite paint ranges. Mm-hmm. Giacomo has his, you have yours, and the listener and the viewer has yours, right?
Right.
What we're here to really just kind of drive home is that no paint range is by far the best, hands down,
like in
every single category.
Definitely.
Because it's just not possible. Like,
it's not.
You couldn't do it chemistry wise.
You got to mix and match.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we like and dislike about each range, and then we'll kind of come back around.
Yeah.
So Scale 75, we've already been talking to them. What do you guys think about Scale 75? Have you used their paints a lot?
Never even touched it.
Only a handful. And here's my thing. The times I have used them, I did like the colors. It is a little harder to kind of prep because of the shaking, because you really need to get it like mixed in. It could have just been that they're older.
That's like old Army painter.
Yeah, exactly. You just really had to shake it. And I wanted to try more because my buddy Lucas had them in the house and we were trying them out. But the problem is you can't really get them at a store. I'd have to order them online, which is fine. You can absolutely order online, but there's something to get it in the store, kind of look at the color. Some stores, if they're nice enough, like more local, you might be able to try it on a little palette. and then I get to see what it looks like and decide that's what I want to buy. So I can't do the same thing
Are they
online.
primarily for like scale modeling? Like, is this for?
I mean, you could argue that's a scale model.
I mean,
right?
I guess
like,
I guess so. Yeah, but would it be something that you'd see at like the train store?
No.
No?
You can't even really find them at hobby stores.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're very much a specific thing from like I think more European.
Some
Yeah.
stuff like enamels like are like you can find that at the
You can
train
find
store.
those.
If
In
you're
fact,
looking
that's where I
for it.
usually get enamels and inks.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
yeah.
a Butaleg and a few other oils and
Exactly. Yeah, and you can do a lot.
We live in LA, so there's tons of stores all over the place, but you have to drive an hour to an hour and a half,
Right,
maybe
to get to
2
somewhere
hours
like
to get
House of Hobbies. You know,
House of
like,
Hobbies. Yeah, great place. I buy their stuff all the time. If you guys want to help support them as a company, you can go on
Was it Burbank House of Hobbies, right?
BurbankHouseOfHobbies.com and you can buy from them.
We don't do an affiliate link. We just really like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sell Vallejo, they sell AK, they sell Mr. Hobby, they sell Tamiya, they sell like all the off-brand kind of stuff.
I would say more like dedicated for, as you mentioned, scale modeling as opposed to, let's call it like this, scale modeling and modeling for playing, right? Models for play.
Yeah.
Right? So
Well, I think the lines have been blurring a lot lately because like
Yeah.
it used to be like we only really do this, but now it's like, you know, you have like Flame on Miniatures and a few other YouTubers that are like oils are great for Warhammer. You know,
Right, yeah.
enamels and testers have been used on Gundam for years. And in fact, there are some Gundam people who do Gundam stuff, Gunpla or whatever it's called,
Yep.
that paint better than every Warhammer player.
Like a majority of them, yeah, because they've just been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely used the panel lining tools they have for that before on Tau, and it works.
It does.
Like, you know,
I frankly should be doing that.
You should.
I
It's
panel
awesome.
line basically every miniature I paint, and it's normally with again that same terrible black craft paint most of the time.
That's fair.
Most of the time.
Well, bringing it back to scale. That's my
Yeah.
experience with them. They're a nice color, or there is a handful of colors that he chose because he says they're nice. And using them, yes, but I can't get them to test, and I can't find them easily, which makes it kind of hard.
Absolutely.
If you're starting, like you wouldn't know about this brand in the beginning. Well, maybe now more because YouTube creators use them more frequently. But, you know, going in, let's say back in 2000 and when did I start my journey? 2006. Like, I didn't know that color existed. I knew Games Workshop because it was in the store.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, I think they're great, but they're really hard to get. So that's my experience with them, you know?
Yeah. As a colorblind painter, there are certain things that I have to do. So I go on YouTube a lot and I look up skin colors, how to paint skin, how to paint red, and how to paint green. And if something looks good to me, I'm like, all right, I'm going to follow that recipe.
You have
and
to
put
you have to lock it in. You're like, that's how I'm painting red.
Yeah.
Like
and
that's
you
it.
use those 4 colors. And you can tell the shades. You might not be able to see. We might not see it the same as you, but it still looks good, right? Or green or skin colors and stuff like that. So like a lot of times when I'm looking up green, red, or skin recipes, which makes me sad, not enough people do skin recipes out there. It's really difficult, especially to find non-Caucasian skin.
Yes.
Good
Yes.
tutorials for
That is
non-Caucasian
tough.
skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to make them. I just can't see them very well. Giacomo says that there's green in his skin, and I told him he's not an orc.
Gotta have that olive tone.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. But that's probably because I can't see it. That tonal variation in olive skin, right?
Well, yeah, because it's blended into the brown. And in fact,
Yeah.
that's how I would paint olive skin tones is you use olive green.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
'cause it's-
That makes a
Yeah,
lot of
see,
sense.
And
we're
you
two
gu-
colorblind
yeah,
guys.
exactly. You guys
I would
are
have
gonna
had
be
to
able
look
tell.
up a tutorial for that. I
And
would have
everyone-
found
everyone's
like
like,
a
yeah.
pre-made paint.
Everyone
to
in
do
the
that.
comments if you guys think that there's actual olive color skin
I believe it.
tones in Giacomo's
You-
thing, put it in the comments. You know,
It is. It is.
I'm
I
gonna
believe
bring
it.
I'm gonna bring the Iden Versio model that I used it on from Star Wars, and I'm gonna have you look at it, and you're gonna go like, "Where's the green?" And I'm gonna tell you can't tell it because normally you're not supposed to. It's built. It's to change the way the brown works to have all of the
Yeah.
I've done that with Retributor armor. I have painted And I was told this because I can't tell the difference, but I was told this by a painter friend of mine back in 2010 when I was like 20 years old. He would use Dark Angel's Green as the base coat for Retributor armor. And then you use Retributor armor over the top of it, and it gives a more aged look because you have a green color underneath the warm color.
Okay.
Yeah, and it might not have been called Retributor back then because Games Workshop has changed their paints.
What was it called? Oh my gosh, it was something Ultramar? No. Gehenna's Gold? No, that was a newer color.
That is a newer color.
Oh my god, what was it called?
I remember.
I remember like
I know Leadbelcher used to be bolt gun,
and it used to
bolt
be
gun.
It used to be in the dumb spinning thing, and it was a hexagonal thing.
I still have
some
some of
Ultramarines when I first started
I don't know
Ultramarines.
if I ever had.
Oh man.
Oh, he's breaking it out. There it is.
I still have.
That's the one. I owned one of those.
Oh, there it is.
Oh my god.
I still have these paints, which are GW old paints, and this is their ink range.
Wow.
Which is like
so much for P3.
Pop open, and they're just
that.
inks.
Nice.
Yeah. This is like hobby gold.
People like
if you're like sub 20, you'd have no idea what I'm talking about.
Though
those were designed and out of stock.
I think they
20 years ago.
When I started Warhammer, they had just switched, like just that year, switched off of those old pots. Yeah, if I remember, my buddy Elijah got me into Warhammer my freshman year of high school, and they had just switched off those pots. So he had, I think, if I remember correctly, he had a bunch of those old pots, and I got the new ones.
Yeah,
these are the same names, but different pots.
These are
glass pots.
No, they're not
they're
glass.
plastic.
They're
Clear
plastic.
plastic.
But the inks are just an ink, so they don't dry out like a normal
like a washwood or something. Yeah.
So they're like super liquidy. They're just a normal ink that you would find somewhere else.
They remade some of these inks. I remember I used to own a couple of them back in like 2012
So nostalgic
or whatever.
So nostalgic. I missed
Great.
The AK inks, AK sent us all their inks for free, and I am a huge fan of the AK range. Like typically the inks.
He's an AK fan.
Well,
I'm well
on
aware.
some. Well,
loves AK,
but I don't know if they're my favorite paint range.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Controversial.
Yeah, I think that they make amazing paints, but there's been a couple AK paints that have been. I was like, yo. Who the fuck made this paint? And I was like, oh, it's AK? Damn, I feel bad. Because like I think most of their paints are phenomenal. Just like every other paint range. Like it's difficult to tell. Like in our black episode, we tested every black or 6 blacks.
Most of the blacks.
And they all covered about the same, but it was more along the lines of what dried the best and looked the best to us, right? Now, there's a specific difference. Everyone was telling us to use apple barrel black. Well, I just used apple barrel black on all of my terrain, for my 3D printed terrain for Kill Team, and it was awful.
Garbage.
Absolutely awful.
You should be using Art Deco, man.
Well, the Art Deco enamel black that I got was gloss.
Boo.
Yeah, so
I can't find the flat. I can't find the flat.
I'll
bring you some flat. It might be out. They might not have it anymore. I've had this for like 7 years. It might just not exist anymore.
Yeah. So I forgot where I was going with. We were talking about scale.
We were talking about scale. We got to finish the scale.
We got
conversation.
sidetracked.
So I went for scale, specifically the reason why I brought up everything beforehand. I was going down a path and I meandered off that path.
Happens.
I'm coming back to the path now.
There you go.
Scale. Oh, I bought a bunch of red from Scale because I was trying to paint the Avatar of Cain, the brand new one. And they used some Scale 75 in that red recipe.
Right.
But when I started finding out that I was colorblind outside of my art teacher in college telling me when I was like 24, like, you need to go get tested for color blindness. And I was like, why? And they're like, you can't make skin color. And like I painted my girlfriend at the time violet because I couldn't.
Oh no.
Yeah. Like I
Oh, this is really bringing me back. Oh.
Yeah. She was like, our thing was like, you aren't allowed to use white and you aren't allowed to use black, but you have to mix skin tone from red. All your paint project is you have to paint something, but you can only use primary colors, red, blue, and
Ooh, that's tough.
yellow.
That would destroy me. There's no
And
way I could do that.
There was I spent 2 hours trying to mix the right ratios to get a skin tone color, and I could not. I was like, I need
could
white.
never do it.
I need it. And I couldn't, And I brought it in. I painted my girlfriend, and she's Violet. I still have the painting.
You have to dig it up one day to show
Her name is not Violet. She was just Violet.
Violet, you're turning violet, Violet.
So after that one, she said, you paint with so many primary colors and you paint so saturated, you should really go see if you have color blindness. I was like, I've been painting for 24 years. I'm not colorblind.
They got you.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, how'd you know? And she's like, I could just tell. And I was like, okay. That's like why my Imperial fists are so
yellow,
saturated.
You need
Yeah,
the
I
color
like
to see
the
it.
saturation because I can see it better. So I bought a bunch of the red scale 75 stuff, and I couldn't get it to work good enough for me. It was too thin, and it was not going onto the model particularly how I would want it to, and I couldn't tell the tonal variations. So it's hard for me to say that anything about scale 75 range, because the only experience that I have with it was a color that I can't paint on a medium that I can't paint on my favorite model, which frustrated me with the paint range. And I didn't buy any more scale 75 because I was ruining the avatar of Cain. Right. So yeah, that's besides the point. Scale 75. That's my experience. Okay.
Because they have a really nice, like this brown color I'm in love with.
Yeah.
But I hate getting it to work. So I never use it.
Fair.
Because that's what Lucas had. And he's like, try this with your browns. And I did for like leathers. And you're just like, oh,
yeah.
beautiful
Nice.
color.
Yeah. I like a
use.
lot of browns. I do.
Does it mix? Does it have issues mixing with other brands of paint because it's a gel medium?
I haven't seen.
Like
You know,
that's a
I've never tried
That's
mixing
a
it.
big qualifying factor.
But
I have
probably-
is that the
probably
paint
the different
has
mediums.
to mix well with a different paint range.
They gotta play nice.
Yeah, like because I love to mix paints to get like a color I need, or well, sometimes I mix incorrectly.
Hey,
but
that's
you live and learn. But yeah, I like to mix paint, so it's it's pretty important that the paint can mix with a different paint range. And some paint ranges do not mix.
They don't play nice.
particularly well, or sometimes they'll mix very good and then they'll split.
Yes.
On the wet palette,
Yes.
and I find that's a Monument Hobbies special,
Which
If
we
I'm
will get to.
It works is great with each other. We'll get to Monument
we'll
Hobbies
get
later.
to them.
We'll get to Monument
unless
Hobbies.
If we
we're
do
done
it too early in the episode, no one's going to actually stick around for the whole thing.
That's right.
There's a lot of monument
that's right.
stands out
So-
there.
We
so-
hate Monument.
Yo, talk to yourselves, guys. Which we'll do some reveals there, but okay. So that's scale. That's our scale.
Let's move to GW.
Ooh, the classic,
So GW is by far the biggest paint range known to man
insanely accessible.
for Warhammer products,
Definitely.
Miniature products. I would
miniature
say.
products in general. They are everywhere. The Citadel paint range is generally great and phenomenal,
Decent.
decent, and they were the gold standard for a very long time until the third generations of paint started coming out about 2 years ago. And that includes Monument, that includes AK third gen, that includes like
Vallejo with the
Vallejo
redesign.
model color. Those both got increased. And in fact, I believe that Citadel actually wasn't doing great, and then they came out with Contrast.
And what a product.
Oh, those are bangers.
What a
Now,
product.
I will say, I'll start off with GW since I ended.
Okay.
GW paints, I pretty much own every single paint. Pretty much. Maybe not all. Maybe not every single tonal variation of blues, because I think I'm missing a lot of blues in the
I think they've added
GW
a
range.
few since in the last few years.
Yeah, blues and greens I'm typically missing on those because I didn't own a lot of armies that I would
needed
paint a
those
lot of blue.
colors,
in.
right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be painting on our thing, right? Did I talk about that earlier?
Yes.
Yeah.
I started with Monument Hobbies, and
Yeah.
you're doing a different color range.
Well, I will do a Monument Hobbies challenge as well, so we can compare
Right.
when we talk about it. But GW for me has been a great thing. I know how to use the paints. The paints are very normalized. Now, when you watch Hobby Highlander, you'll be like, I don't know what I'm talking about, because obviously, like, I'm like, oh, this is Abaddon Black. Oh, it's great. And then it's like, I was wrong, but it's like the paint range that makes Abaddon Black better than Abaddon Black is.
Right.
Because Abaddon Black
Right.
actually sucks. Right. And you're like, this is everything I thought Abaddon was, but it's not.
Turns out it was this.
It turns out it was this, right? So like, and you find that happening with a lot of nostalgia, because it used to be the best paint range. It used to be like,
Back
it
when
used to
was
have a
Chaos
bunch
Black.
of stuff.
Yeah.
For me, the only thing that I really use GW paints on now are specifically, I use them for very specific colors that aren't available in other ranges. I love GW skin tones. I use a lot of GW skin tones, and then I use their contrast range and I use their shades. So I use, like, there's no one that makes a Skaven Blight Dinge or Skaven Storm Vermin Fur. That's how I painted my guys. I really like the warmness to the gray.
Of the gray, yeah.
Of the gray, the gray brown, right?
Yeah.
I like their grays because they're easy to differentiate, right? I also have not invested into a new gray range. Well, now I have another gray range, so we can try it. But there's Uthwan, but I just got out of Uthwan prison, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And Administratum Gray, like, I found some monument stuff that's just better. There are some GW, like, I'm not gonna lie, Skaven Blight Dinge and Skaven Storm Vermin Fur are awful paints.
It's the color. In terms of
it
use.
is the color.
It's the color.
Sometimes you can use a paint that does not have good coverage, and you use it more because the hue is amazing.
It's what you're buying.
Because it's not, paints aren't only how well do they cover. A lot of times it is, how does it mix on the wet palette? What is the tonal variation of it, right? Because back in the day, I painted old GW Howling Banshees from black to bone.
Why did you do that to yourself?
This is maniacal behavior.
I did this in 2008, and I painted 10 Howling Banshees this way.
We've all been there.
We've all done
all
it.
been there.
And it was the way that they've taught us how to paint, because we didn't know what panel lining was.
Right. We needed to break away from it.
Oh, yeah.
There was no slap chop. I invented slap chop back in 2012, by the way. No, 2011. But it wasn't called slap chop. I think somebody on YouTube named it that.
He coined the term and made it famous.
He did.
Yeah. It's a good term.
Back then, there was no contrast. You would just dry brush it, and then you'd water down paint immensely, and then you'd put the watered down paint.
You make your own wash. Yeah.
Yeah, you make your own wash.
Makes sense.
I'm sure a lot of people
had discovered their own version.
Discovered slap chop in the 80s. I'm sure it's
they had
probably.
Like back when GW had like the in your codexes, is all the studio painters being the guys in the garage making the game. Like, here's how I did this, and they explain it, and you don't get that anymore in GW products.
Yeah. So
I used to love those. Even if you didn't follow the scheme, it was just nice to see how they came up with it.
Right, because then you
very useful.
So there are some GW paints that I cannot get rid of. Everland Sunset is
That's
amazing.
A great color. I love my yellow.
I love Flash Gits. I love Iandin. I love Phalanx. I love Mephiston, Corn Red.
I like Wild Rider
Blood for the
Red
Blood God.
Yeah, that is such a good technical paint. Still use it to this day.
Yeah, that one's really good.
Has so much uses.
Yeah. It used to be Uthwan Gray, because that's how I would start painting white. Is you start with Uthwan and you Uthwan, whatever it's called. Then you go down. You like tone it down, and you just highlight it with white, and it's done.
Brightening, yep.
I think a couple of their browns are great, and then you have like Karak Stone, but where GW has gotten me into their folds for sure is contrast. I own multiple pots of every single contrast paint, at least one of each, and I use contrast a lot. I use contrast a ton, and then I will highlight on top of that. It's basically it's my base coat for a lot of things.
Right, and then you build up from there.
And then I build up from there.
That's how you did Vespids, right?
And Master Chief.
And Master Chief.
This Master Chief green.
Yeah, he toned up to the color.
is contrast.
Can you see that color? I'm kidding.
I mean, low-key looks a little orange, but I'm gonna trust Dakota to follow the tutorial on how to paint Master Chief.
The Master Chief one was actually from Juan Hidalgo. Juan Hidalgo did a green on his
like contrast
his Tanith first and only.
Oh, okay.
And how he did his military green, I just copied him from there. And
makes sense.
Yeah. So you do like Camo Creed, 2 coats, and then you highlight it with the Elysium, Ogrin, done. Yeah, so I mean I had to follow a recipe because I can't come up with a green on myself. Call me
He's thinking.
You
He's
can
cooking.
do it. You can do it.
Call me
believe in you.
what is it called? Gosh dang it, man.
Dakota, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
Call me uninspired or like not original because I can't come up with a color scheme.
Nothing wrong with that. If it exists and it's awesome, you absolutely should use it.
Yeah, but then I painted yellow leather, which no one has done on YouTube.
Exactly.
And I created
figure
that.
out the stuff you like eventually.
Yeah.
But if there's a good color that exists, and I say this to everybody, if there's a good color and a recipe that exists, there's no reason not to use it. You're not any worse because you use someone else's technique. Do I know how to bake cookies on my own? No, I learned that stuff. You know, like Martha Stewart had my back.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not going to figure it out. I'm going to use the recipe. And here's the thing. You still have to know how to mix the cookie.
Yeah.
You got to follow the instructions. So some people are worse at technique, but if you know it, it's great. I think that green is awesome. You know, I don't care who came up with it. You applied it excellently.
Thank you, sir.
And that's the difference.
So what
also, you would have done the green differently than the person you like. If you think it's stealing, you're going to apply the green differently than the person you're stealing from.
Right.
Yeah. Great artists steal.
Also, they put it out as a
Best
tutorial. That's the point, is for you to follow it.
Yeah.
If they didn't
the
want
clicks.
you to steal the technique wouldn't be in a YouTube video.
Exactly.
Designed for you to watch it.
Yeah. So what do you guys feel? So for me, I love their base colors. I love certain colors in their range, specifically because they don't exist anywhere else. I love their contrast. I love their shades, and I love their technicals.
Okay.
A lot of their other paints, I think, definitely could use help in like a redesigned format or with other things. I think other companies do it better. What do you guys think about GW?
Take this one first.
This is interesting. So I've used GW a lot when I like started painting, but these days I think I really only use 4 GW colors. I use corn red as like the base of a lot of my red. And then I put a P3 paint on top of that, Scorn Red, unrelated to Corn Red, but a great paint. And then I put Wild Rider Red on top of that. And then sometimes I'll mix an orange in for the highlight. But I like specifically those GW Reds because they mix really well with other paints. You could take the worst paint imaginable, and the GW paints are so thick that they'll take the paint and they'll mix really well, and you can control the mixing. But aside from that, I haven't painted with true metallics in a while because I've been trying to learn NMM. But I've used, I guess, Retributor Armor and Lead Belcher, which are awesome. And then I don't really use washes. So, but if you are using washes, the GW washes are awesome. I haven't gotten a better set of washes. Then I haven't really used their contrast paint. I've used Army Paint or Speed Paint just because it's like half the price.
That's fair. That's true.
The contrast is amazing because you can thin it down one piece of paint to 4 pieces of medium and create your own washes of a specific color.
Definitely.
You can run it right through an airbrush too.
Yeah.
Ooh, see, I don't use an airbrush. So there you go.
You got to get on it.
Yeah.
Maybe I should.
If at least to get your colors down.
Brush only.
Yeah.
I was a brush purist for a while, don't worry. And it's because I couldn't afford one. But then
Yeah,
I was
and
given
then
one forever.
and then for one of Giacomo's birthdays, we got him an airbrush, and he was like, "Oh yeah."
It probably makes your life much easier.
Oh my god, it's like night and day. Yeah. Now I just trying to remember maintenance, like because I'll sometimes be like, oh, I don't want to clean this, but I have to.
I would
clean
ruin
this.
that airbrush.
You have to
There's
clean
no
it.
way. I think that's it. I don't really paint with washes. I usually mix my own like glaze that I'll put as a wash, or I'll just paint up from the dark color to begin with and slowly mix in paint to lighten it. But if you're starting out, the GW washes, at least from what I could tell, I don't know if you can beat them just for ease of application. into the mic. Got it. For ease of application. And also, I think you can genuinely just mix them with water if you're starting out, and they will be fine. Whereas some other stuff, you can't mix with water and not have it be really blotchy. But the GW stuff, you can be really messy with. And a lot of their washes are multi-purpose. Like specifically Reichland Flesh Shade is awesome on any kind of gold and on flesh. It's so good on gold. I don't know why they should put flesh and gold shade because it works so good on gold. It works on bronze and it really adds some warmth to it. And it's not too dark either. Like it really gets into the cracks and stuff. Yeah, I would say that's probably the stuff I use GW paints for now.
Okay. So I'm going to have mostly the same take. I have about maybe, 7 colors I use. I have not found anything that has beaten the Caliban green, the Warpstone green, and then you use that really bright green.
Moot green?
Moot green.
Love moot green.
Moot green.
I've never used any of these
Love
colors.
it. The acidic color green tones is beautiful.
I love moot green because it's such a saturated green that I can see.
Green. It's
Yeah.
so
When
green.
people paint their orcs like really dark green colors, it really makes it hard for me to see, especially paint judging.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, G, you have to judge this one. I can't. I'll have to move on.
If you're looking for an example,
you have to
of that,
pass it over.
if you can pull up any of the guys with grenades, the frag grenades on my dudes are all painted with that green thing. That is one of the few GW things I did. I think the Visionary is probably the easiest to look for grenades. It should be like right in his front. I don't know if you can see the green.
Yeah, no, I can. That's a very good green.
That is green tone, and of course I use a little bit of yellow, whitish yellow to make it the most bright at the end. But those are like my 3 favorite GW paints. Corn red, because there's nothing quite like it that I found. And then I use a handful of washes. And the only reason I'm doing their washes is because some of the colors don't exist elsewhere.
Yeah.
They really do have the market of like special color for washes. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
And then of course you have your handful of contrast paints, which I think are amazing. Skeleton Horde is a savior.
It is.
And now I want to talk a little bit bad about the products. So we talked about how they changed some of the formula. I used to love using Agrax Earthshade, and they have changed it.
They've changed it?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I haven't bought an Agrax Earthshade in years.
So the new shades were changed about a year ago. That was publicly done.
Oh, man.
Maybe a year and a half ago. And they basically made them better. And what they ended up doing with them is that they started making them with the contrast medium, so they flow better.
Oh,
and now they flow into cracks much more easier.
It has to change the color and texture,
but
right?
It does,
when the paint dries.
not really. It doesn't stain like it used to. So you used to use a wash just to stain everything a specific color, right? It adds like a filter, right? That's what shades used to be. The GW paints now flow into the cracks a lot better, similar to a contrast paint, which is a great effect, and not every paint range does that. In fact, every other paint range so far that I've seen, their shades do what GW used to do.
It's a tint.
Yeah, there you go. Tint.
Yeah, tints. Whereas this is like, it has the capillary action where it goes just into the crevices. Oh, so it's useful, but it's not
different.
The same.
It's not what we used to use it for anymore. And that was always
now
the thing.
you've lost this incredible use case, a tool you had that you now have to like magically recreate or find somewhere else.
Don't worry, we will get to them.
Oh,
I found a substitute that I like.
I'm excited. Perfect.
Because when we look at those shades, like my buddy, he used to play Cadians, right? And he would just paint them all and then go like, "Hey, have you heard about washes? The technique of like, it's painted, wash, done, and it looks
Classic.
decent. It looks decent, right? Like I'm not gonna think it's the best painted, but it looks great on the table. And you can't really do that technique with this anymore because obviously contrast is there to do that now, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. And then the last thing I want to say about the paint range, I was cleaning up my desk yesterday after finishing this set last night. And I looked at my paints going like, oh man, I think GW is about to go in the special box that I put in the closet behind me that I don't use much. And then I got to put all these other colors in the front that I need ready.
Yeah.
And I thought only like 10 GW paints stayed. Shades, a few more stayed from Shades, but just specifically GW paints stayed on the shelf. The rest were gone. And I was thinking, and I don't know if that's the progression of just being a painter or if I legitimately no longer really like using them. Like, I like the gray, going Eshin, Administratum, and then I forget what the last one, Ministorum.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the 3 are.
Dawnstone,
Dawnstone.
Dawnstone, then Administratum. Yeah.
Yes, and what I don't like about them is they have this thickness to them that you have to thin down. And when you
You do.
you try to, like, because I use it to paint all like the black lining on Space Marines because I love painting marine armor.
Yeah.
And you're using it, and it's like it's so thin, and since it's such a tight line, like redoing it each time is a pain to get. Like, I need to do coverage, and then I got to wait for it to dry, then I got to do coverage, and I don't like that anymore. So I've been looking for.
There's other paints that do it better.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'd rather
Definitely.
get one that just has better coverage one time, and maybe only twice instead of doing it 3 to thin it down.
I also think that GW no longer is the standard for beginner paint range. It used to be, in my opinion, but I think the next paint brand that we'll talk about takes over that by far the best is the easiest.
Before we move on, I got one last complaint about GW paints. It's not the pots. The pots are fine. It's just it's specifically the names. And I'm sure you probably identify with this, Dakota. I genuinely do not know what color some of these paints are. I have to find usually my wife and text her a picture of the paint if I'm buying a GW paint and say, is this actually red? Because it'll be named after some Space Marine faction that I don't know at all. I don't know what.
What's Blood Angels Red, guys?
Well, Blood Angels Red, I know, but like it'll be named after like Mantis Warriors, and I'm like, well, that's probably green because a Mantis is green, but some Mantises are not green. So you're like, how do I know? And other paints will say, and we might get into this with whatever paint it's going to be next, but there's a paint range recently that is extremely colorblind friendly. That just
it's the one we're talking about.
Okay,
next.
well, let's jump into it then.
All
let's
right,
get into
it.
My one negative about GW before
Here we go.
is the paint pots. I've transitioned most of my paints into different
I love the little scooper though. The little scooper thing it
the
has.
scooper's
You
good,
shake it
but
up. I love the scooper.
with how expensive the paint range is to then have it dry out and have to go do something else. So like
it makes the ring. It makes the ring on the inside.
Yeah,
you dry
maintenance.
paint. You have to clean it out. You get paint all over your hands.
And then like some of the consistency on some of the colors, I don't know what they did, but like the Uthwin gray through an airbrush is just full of chunks, and it just clogs your airbrush every time. It's just awful. There's like certain things that are great, like I said, but the pots are awful. The pots are bad for airbrushes. Like the airbrush pots, cool, you get more paint. It doesn't go into the airbrush very well. The paints themselves can be a pain. I like it for metallics, right? Like I like opening the pot, get my dollop of Retributor armor, which another thing that I've been doing is I mix Retributor armor with Vallejo metal color gold. So it has a better flow and has just as good, if not better, coverage.
Really?
But yeah, I mean, that's another thing.
Specifically through the airbrush?
No.
Or just in general?
Just in general.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll show you. You.
Yeah, show me, please. That's awesome.
So there's like a few things that, you find tips and tricks, but like the main thing about being a good painter is trying new things, trying different things, trying different painting patterns to then sum up your skills and be better.
Not even being a good painter, just being a painter. You should always try something new. And if it's terrible, you're painting the paint so thin anyway. Just spray it black and restart.
Yeah. And
I've done that many times. There's nothing wrong with just being like, terrible scheme. We're killing it. We're restarting.
This is chemistry right here. We're just doing chemistry experiments every time we paint miniatures.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and then you can dunk your models in 99% alcohol.
You can. Or if they're metal, you dunk them in acetone, which is way more fun and smells way
But I used
crazier.
the wrong cup, and the acetone ripped through the plastic cup.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh my God. That was on me for not reading there's a little thing, the triangle, and it's like depending on the code, it's what it's, and I got the wrong one.
You got to get the mason jar.
Yeah.
I should have done that, but I didn't.
Yeah. And then there's also Simple Grain works good.
Yeah, you can use LA's.
LA's totally awesome.
It's good too.
Yeah. A bunch of good stuff. So if you mess up, you can always
just restart.
You can restart.
Nothing wrong with that.
Hard. So Army Painter is the next one we're going to talk about.
Okay, I hoped you were talking about this.
Yeah. Go for it.
No,
let's
do it. No, Army Painter. If you haven't used Army Painter's old paint, I
had tons of them, and I got rid of all of them.
I had plenty of them. They were terrible. They were dirt cheap, which is great. And if you're just
they were actually okay for back in the day when GW was the gold standard. You're like, all right, I just have to shake these a lot.
Right. This is my substitute for like $2-3 compared. You know?
Yes, it was way cheaper. And if you're someone who just is like, I just want a very basic paint job for my Dungeons and Dragons monsters that I'm going to use for one session, then great. Like the old Army Painter worked just fine.
Yeah, you don't have to buy apple barrel paints. You can get a little bit higher quality.
You can spend an extra $1 and get the Army Painter paints.
The colors you want. And the model.
The new Army Painter Fanatics are awesome. I don't know if they're the best paint imaginable, but for a new... I have a couple buddies who've been getting into Warhammer lately, and I've been telling them, like, you should try the Army Painter ones. They come in a 3-color triad.
The triad is
6 colors.
Yeah, it's a 6-color triad, and it's incredible.
Reaper paints used to be in the 3-color ones.
Yeah, dude, when you buy them in their little boxes,
I like the Reaper paints too, but maybe we could do that later. But yeah, they come in a 6-color set, and it specifically, it'll say the name, you know, which is something dumb like GW names theirs. But then on the bottom, it will say the color. It will say like dark greenish blue, which is, and it will show like where in the process of the triad it's supposed to be. It's just like such a simple additive feature that even if the paint isn't the best, makes it so accessible, especially as us being colorblind, being able to not have to text someone what color is this paint and just being able to pick up the paint and go, great, I know what this is and I can figure it out once I'm home. No, I used I needed to make denim, like to paint denim for these jean stealers because they're in jeans. And I had a buddy of mine, Andrew, help me pick out paints from this paint range specifically because I could pick all paints from the same set, and it would tell me on the bottom of the bottle like
this is meant to be
together. Yes. So I could mix them as I wanted and use one to like glaze on the shadows and stuff. Yeah, I don't really have any complaints with them other than I'm sure there are more expensive paints you can buy that are nicer, but especially if you're starting out, get some of these. They're also cheap. They're real cheap.
They're very affordable.
And they come in a dropper bottle, and they got the ball in the dropper bottle.
Right, the mixing ball.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome.
For me, this is the first paint range that I think is a great paint range, and one of the ones that you should consider if you're watching this video as one of the paint ranges that might be a good place for you, at least to start. If you only want to get one paint range, this is a very good paint range to get. And it's not necessarily because it is the best. To be honest, every other paint range has better paints than Army Painter, right? But every other paint range is much more varied. And our testing of Army Painter, they're all good.
They're not all great, but they're all good, right?
Correct.
Yes. The keyword.
Yes, exactly.
They're all good.
Yes.
Every single one.
In fact, I actually think it gives, this is something GW should consider, because they're really ramping into their space. Like every store I have that have both GW and them, Army Painter takes a lot of space.
It's a huge range.
And they're out there. So people are like buying Army Painter stuff over GW.
The thing that I'm upset with this is that I used to buy all of the Army Painter spray paints because they were perfectly
spray paints.
And they were perfectly colored with their models. I haven't seen them be perfectly colored with the paint color.
The rattle can.
I haven't seen them be perfectly like they used to be.
Because it used to be almost pitch perfect.
They were color matched.
Yes, the black specifically was great.
Even the gray, the blue, the yellow, everything was
awesome.
And now I would say that their spray paints are thicker than others, but I haven't seen them update their.
Just hold the model a little further away.
Exactly, but they also their paint rate their spray paints go over MDF wonderfully, and we have a lot of MDF terrain in the studio. I paint a lot with MDF.
Even thought of that. That makes a lot of sense.
And in fact, I had to get away from it because I was spending way too much money on spray paint. So I went and I color matched a house latex paint so that I could roll on. And now I roll on paint color matched.
It's so much easier for that kind of terrain
with Army Painter colors. Like my terrain, like my blue and white terrain. I don't have it in here. Is crystal blue and I think ultramarine blue or something from the Army Painter range, color matched to Army Painter. right?
Oh,
like
cool.
it is.
Yeah, like from
you know?
Home Depot or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you Lowe's,
Okay.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
A
So
paint that's designed to go on wood.
yeah.
Yeah,
would've
and the protection it's tough.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can scrape it,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fine.
One of my favorite things about Army Painter is the washes.
I haven't
am
used
a
any of their washes.
huge
I haven't used any of
fan.
them.
He
I
loves
love-
the
I
washes.
can tell that he has
But-
a little twinkle in his eyes.
But my favorite thing about their watches, I actually don't use them on models a lot. I don't use so they have a dark tone, they have a soft tone, they have a strong tone.
okay, I'm lying. I have used these before. These
Yes.
are awesome. These
They
are
are.
actually great watches. Okay,
Yeah.
we're ringing some bells.
Yeah. So
These are fantastic.
dark tone, strong tone, and
light tone, flesh tone.
light tone, flesh tone, all these kinds of things are great. But usually I use them on the bases. They have more of a gel medium base, and you can mix them with water. And I use them on a lot of terrain. I go through these bottles like crazy, right? I'll just dump a whole pots, like squeeze a whole one out onto
they're
like
so
a whole
cheap.
board. Yeah, they're
Doesn't
super,
matter.
They're
Right, you
super
can just
cheap.
buy 'em.
2 or 3.
They're
for the price of
great
a GW
quality.
pot.
And then I also use a lot of those on my bases because I like how dark they are. I like how they function on bases. And then I've used them on some of my old Tyranids and stuff like that too. But I'm a really big fan of the paint range. I think the metallics are great. Their speed paints are great. Their actual normal paints are great.
Speed paint.
There's-
I've used their speed
I
paints
want
a
to
lot.
try them. I
There's-
bought a few for
They're good,
for
and they're real
bolt action
cheap.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're colorblind friendly, and there's nothing
Most
that I
important
would
part.
say I genuinely dislike about the Army Painter range. There's nothing that is bad, and do I think they are my top pick for if you could only buy one range? They're close, but they're not my particular number one pick. If you had to choose one paint range,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you kind of nailed it,
think
right?
that's
Like
fair.
so the good parts, the triads, the double triads. I don't know what is hexads.
That we're getting
Your
close to other words there.
hexads.
Yeah.
Whatever the six range word would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because penta is 5. Yeah. So whatever their
yeah.
6 triad is awesome. I'm gonna call it the double triad. That's what I'm gonna
Yeah,
call it.
double triads.
The double
Okay,
triads
okay.
are awesome,
Yeah.
and every
Sounds
time
like a gang.
It sounds like a gang. We're the double triads, baby. Double T's. There we go. That's what it is. You got to make 2 T's. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Anyways, they're great because everyone I've seen who's done it.
Or you could go 6 from sign language. Oh. No, that's 66. Sorry.
Okay,
But yeah.
okay.
I like that. I like
I
that.
like that.
It was fun regardless. So their triads. Every time I've seen people use it, I go, it looks good. Are they the most pigmented and like punched out colors? No, but they're great. They're great for a lot of players who are getting in and using it. They follow the directions. Awesome. Honestly,
good
it's
consistency too,
that-
and they
that's-
mix with other paint ranges.
they do
too,
well,
very
yeah,
well.
because
Yeah.
they're common.
They're just good.
one.
They're rich, they're thick, they can be thinned down, they're great on the palette, they're great on a wet palette. And in fact, I really want to try out their flesh color range to see if I can paint different skin tones, for different because I don't want to just paint Caucasian,
I mean, for Caucasian, I don't think anything beats Bugman's Glow as the base.
Yeah, I don't
I've
use
never
Bugman.
found
I don't
any-
use Bugman's Glow for
I
the base.
love Bugman. Well, that's the bottom color for the dark, and then I build up. Like that's that guy. The dead guy is Bugman's Glow.
I typically start from the mid-tone and then I
You work
then-
downwards?
Then I shade in and then I level up so that I never lose my mid-tone.
Okay, that's fair. I do
paint from dark
I do
to
that
light.
sometimes. Other times when I'm going with more of these exaggerated colors, I do the dark and build up because he's very exaggerated for the color on.
And that's the thing is like we all paint differently, right?
Right,
We've
yeah.
all found something that we like or we generally do that's different.
Because
than
there's
other
not a
people.
best technique. It's just each one. Like he is more cartoony, which I actually admire so much because I don't do it this way. But I'm
It's
such
difficult.
a fan of this
It's
color.
difficult. It's hard to put down that thick black line.
Right. And then
You
want
know?
to do it, right?
Yeah, it is. It is tough, and sometimes you mess up on
And then you got to
the
fix
panel
it.
line, and then you have to fix it. And you're like, ooh. But the problem
And
is,
it's
I've
black.
it's yeah.
Fantastic.
And you're like,
Let's see
great,
you-
I have to fix it, but also have to fix it with a section of the miniature that is like 7 blended colors all blended up, and you're like, great, we got to just repaint
Thanks.
the whole section,
See, I'm waiting for you to do a yellow team.
Yellow's tough.
And then you make the black mistake.
And then you make your
Yellow-
black panel line, my guy.
Yellow
I'm waiting.
is tough. I really struggle with yellow. Usually I have to go from a red base and go up.
How about
do
this?
pink.
Don't do any yellow until you watch our Hobby Highlander yellow. We're not going
Okay,
to.
I'm waiting.
We're not
I'm
going
gonna spoil it.
Spoil it. There is a yellow paint in it, which is leaps and bounds
Really?
Hands
above
down amazing.
above
compared to the
I'm
rest.
excited
any
to see it.
other
It's-
yellow.
It's so good.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's amazing.
Okay.
Surprising. and amazing.
Yes. So if you're, that's Army Painter in a nutshell. So
Yeah.
I think it's decent. They've stepped up their game a lot, which they had to do, or else they absolutely would have been flushed down the toilet.
Yeah. A definitely upgrade and a great paint range if you're looking for something. A good paint range.
Yep.
And do they have the best paints of any other one? We're going to be continually testing them, so maybe our thoughts and things will change it. But we'll have to see if they can win anything on the Hobby Highlander episode, and also future challenges to see if they can continually place in the top 3 or top 2. Top 2 is typically a lot harder to get. The third one is generally like, there's usually one bad paint. There's like 3 paints that are all the same, and then there's 2 paints that are at the top, or just 1 at the top.
Right,
and that's
that are
typically
really fighting for
Yeah. So our first through third category is really just like, this one, these 3 are the same. This one
stands out.
Subjectively got a little bit better because we accidentally scored it a little bit higher sometimes.
Right. And subjective, which you should always have multiple people scoring things.
Before we move on from Army Painter, any of you boys ever used the dip? You ever used the dunk?
The can?
I gotta give a tremendous shout out to my boy Brad, who used to be a dip master. He played bolt. Well, he plays bolt action. So the bolt action minis are small. They're really small, and they have a lot of like deep crevice details. So the dip worked perfectly fine on those. If you're mass painting something, but the dip is cursed. That is seeing the jug. The dip jug is despicable. So, you ever used it?
Yes.
Oh.
I will tell you my horror. Let me tell you my horror experience. They still sell the dip?
No.
They don't sell the dip?
Thank God.
No, I will tell you.
Cowardly, frankly. Cowardly behavior.
I will say I have made one of the best terrain washes for our terrain recently.
Featuring the dip?
No. The dip is hot dog water. May I even say ass? So the reason why it's bad is it's just... So the old dip from Army Painter was just rebranded wood stain.
Yeah, it was,
that's what it was. It was wood stain, a brown wood stain that you would dip your miniatures into.
It even came in a little wood stain can. You had to crack it open.
Crack it open and then pop it.
Yeah, it came in a wood stain can, and then what you
smelled horrendous.
Smelled horrendous. It literally, your models never smelt the same. They always smelt like wood thinner. Years later, ask me how I know. I have terrain that I dipped in it. That it's also a gloss. It's also glossy.
It is shiny. It is shiny.
So like after they dried, I waited a week because I was like, this is just wood dip. I waited a week, and then I would spray it with a matte varnish. Well, it didn't like the matte varnish, and it peeled up all of the paint underneath it. So I couldn't varnish it. Because it was technically already varnished, but it's varnished gloss. So for years, players at our tournaments have been playing on our scatter terrain that was dipped in Army Painter
the
stuff,
shiniest
and
scatter
it's
terrain.
gloss, and it's just shiny, yellow, brown.
There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing.
Oh, so that's too good.
My favorite way to make terrain dip now is I will buy one thing of like a brown or a black of like express. Like the either Vallejo, contrast, or Army Painter, or the speed paints, or like a GW paint. I'll buy one of those, full black one. I'll get like a
some kind of medium,
some kind of like a wash from the same range. So like a black wash or a brown wash, and then I'll get ink, usually from my AK, because I like the AK inks the best right now. I've used the Flash Fusion art style ones, the Art Deco ones that you buy at Hobby Lobby. They're awful compared to the AK ones, because the AK ones are always liquidy. They don't get chunks in them.
Sure.
Put them in there, and then I mix it with a bunch of water. And so I'll put the ink, the wash, and a full one of those, and then I'll just fill it up with water until it has a good consistency, and then I just put them on. I'll dip my terrain in it, and I make my own dip.
Nice.
Yeah. That I can then varnish afterwards, because I've learned my lesson.
Right. So,
but I'll get like a big old. I'll make a big old jug, and then I'll put it into.
This man's making moonshine.
He is making moonshine.
He's literally making moonshine with paint. Yeah. There it is.
The barbecue.
There's
the barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
By the way, he's raw dogging it. There's no lid on that.
No, there was no lid.
No
He's
lids.
raw dogging it. So it's like if it spills, it
If
hits
it starts
everything.
to dry out,
We'll
It
make a
is
new
what
one.
it is.
yeah. I spent $10 on a wash that I used for like
For a lot of wash.
10 terrain sets.
Pretty good,
You know,
pretty good.
not
if you
bad.
were at SoCal, you saw him.
It's pretty good. It's better than my terrain wash. My terrain wash is craft paint,
Yep.
water, and a tiny bit of either dish soap or floor polish.
I will put. I also
You
put
use the pledge.
I put
Use the play.
Yeah.
I put a little bit
A little.
of flow improver in it as
Uh-huh.
well, and I will do. I do a little bit of craft paint, just to
little bit.
like if it's just to up the pigment. You know what I mean?
Use the
Yeah.
color.
Yeah. But yes,
So Army Painter.
Army
All
Painter's
right.
dope. Army
Good
Painter's dope.
stuff.
Don't buy the dip.
That doesn't. You can probably find it online.
You can
or
don't
at your
do it.
hardware
You can
store.
eBay that. Get the dip.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
Don't.
So let's go on to the next, probably the third most seen paint out there, Monument.
Oh yeah, they have been pushing aggressively.
We're going,
Yeah,
And
aggressively
going hard.
into the
They've
market.
been going hard.
Yes.
And as you
Spoke to Nova, the people at Nova, the Monument guys. They had no idea who I was, except that we've worked with them in the past as a team for
Squad
sponsorships.
games, Yep.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
For
Army
best paints.
Painter. Notice how I didn't say that. I've tried to reach out to them multiple times. They've ignored me on every
They're a
occasion.
little hard to reach out.
They
to.
are a mega corporation, much like Games
Yeah.
Workshop, which is practically impossible for third-party TOs to actually get a hold of.
That makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
Just
But
takes a
Army
little
Painter does follow us on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, they're waiting for us to drop our War Paint
Paints.
Fanatic.
They're
points.
waiting for sure.
But Monument, Giacomo,
Yes,
you have probably maybe the most experience, especially with just one of these. Do you want to lead us off?
Yes, I
Oh,
will.
I'm ready for
All
this.
right, all right. The color for Monument, in my opinion, is so punch in your face. It's incredible, and I understand
Very saturated.
why a lot of tattoo artists really like it because in tattoo. Inks, you generally are getting really high saturated stuff because it's gonna dull down, right? That's the skin works over time. Like when you get a fresh tat, like I don't know, well you're not gonna see it on camera, but when you get a fresh tat, it is so colorful. Then it starts getting a little softer, which is normal. That's normal. That's how tattoos work, right? So I get why they like that. Now here's the cool thing: unlike tattoos that kind of fade, that blue stays. That is
Does.
not gone. Let's see. All these guys were all in progress from the time I got the box set, like a month after it released. So it's been a minute that they've been blue, and none of that color has faded. I did also put them in a nice sealed environment, so nothing could happen. And only recently did I finish them. So here's the thing: I love the colors. You're seeing the blues, you're seeing the reds, you're seeing the metallics.
Well, they're not seeing it, but we are.
We're seeing it. And again, you can check that out on Instagram. We'll have pictures of these guys for you to take a closer look at and kind of see what we were working with. So like I mentioned, the blues, reds, the golds, the silvers are all on there, and a handful of other colors, like a few browns, and then a very few amount of GW ones that I just like. Again, that green, I'm never going to replace Caliban green.
Yep.
I just love that color scheme. And what I found is it's a great paint range to use through an airbrush. It goes on pretty smooth through a paintbrush, but you got to kind of follow their steps. And we'll also talk about the wet palette that you mentioned earlier. They do love to separate. They do like to
Especially
separate.
if you mix them with another paint. They
Yes, 'cause
will from a different range. From their
I
own
used,
range, they'll be
Vallejo.
fine.
I used Vallejo to mix, and that's exactly what happened. And
Yeah.
AK to mix.
Or like
I have a Reaper paint. I mix almost every warm coat. It's like a very, very pale flesh tone, and I mix it into all my warm tones. And Monument do not appreciate a mix.
I also like mixing contrast medium into
Yeah.
their paints, but it separates almost really quickly.
Yeah. So like when I'll have a big chunk of like the color, and I'll go like I'm starting to use it. Then it's like, oh, it's starting to separate. Which they're no longer fully single pigment. A majority of them still are, but a lot of them, like when you get more into the
That's how they first came into the
That's how they
game.
first
They're
came
like,
into
we're a
existence,
single
single
pigment.
pigment.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, right? Because it was really like, wow, that is a saturated color. Which as a company, I think they got to keep the gas on the super saturated colors, because that's what I know them for. That's why I love them so much, right?
Yeah.
Working with them, you learn about the separation, you learn how to repair it and stuff, or you might not, and you just put a new set on the thing. You really want to use their primers, because a lot of people have told me they have problems with sticking. Like
this has happened to me. Yeah. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So
sometimes it's not a big deal. Like if you have the time to sit there, you can take your brush and continually work
And
the
keep
paint
adding.
over this. No, I don't add. I'll just keep rubbing it over the same area, and eventually the paint will stick because it has something to do with the surface tension of whatever primer you used and the surface tension of the paint. It just doesn't want to stick. So sometimes, like if you're trying to base coat with Monument, you just have to take that extra time
to make sure it sticks.
Yeah. And here's the thing,
agree.
like when you use their primer, theirs is a poly something.
It's a
polyurethane type primer. You got to let that sit 24 hours at least. You got to spray it and then prepare to paint it the next day.
Yeah, and that sometimes is a problem for painters in general.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause
I
you're
like to
I need to
paint
paint this. Like I thought I was going to
immediately
spray
after
it
the
in 15
primer
minutes.
spray goes on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we're locking in.
We have a specific set time to paint. We only have so much motivation to paint.
Right.
At certain times of the day to paint. Or your kid just went down and you have like 30 minutes to paint. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to prime the guys tonight and then I'll see these guys next week when I have another, hour to myself.
Yeah. Right.
It kind of feels bad.
Yeah. So like, luckily I knew this going in after making the mistake of not doing it.
Yeah, he called me up. He's like, Dakota, I
Why
just
is
rubbed
it-
off
why
the
is it
paint.
rubbing off?
And he's like, how do I get this off? I was like, I don't know, put it in alcohol. And
It worked. It worked. And that was 70%. I didn't even have to use the full 90.
Yeah.
70% worked. So you have to do the prep. Like, you get your models cleaned up, whatever you do for your prep, spray them, expect to paint them the next day. And that's another thing. Sometimes it would be on a weekend. So I'd spray them at like 1 o'clock. So when I got home the next day on the weekday, I could do it. Sometimes it was on weekdays, and it's like, well, I didn't get to spray this till 8 o'clock. So now the next day I can only work on them at 8 o'clock because that's the 24-hour limit. You can do it earlier, but even their website recommends you wait the 24
at minimum because it takes. So that's the other thing about spray paints and like Rust-Oleum and all that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with spray paints at all, you really have to pay attention to the dry time, to the cure time, and all that kind of stuff, because ultimately when you're spraying with a lot of stuff, unless if you're flash curing it with like fire, which you don't want to do with miniatures.
You do not. You will set it on fire. I set a miniature on fire with a wash trying that once just to see what happens. I burned a dude's face off. It was like I spent all the time painting it, did the purple wash, and was like, well, let me see if I can heat it with a candle. Oh, I guess his face is gone. I was like, that scout's dead. I guess we're gonna start over.
A disaster.
So like,
I wish I had it still.
That's cool.
So there are certain things that you want to try, especially with primers and stuff like that. You really have to pay attention and read the can, and don't spray paint inside your house. That's what airbrushes are for. If you live in a cold environment or a place that's really rainy, invest in an airbrush, even if it's the Spark Max or like something that only does primer, it's really good, especially if you're in a wet area, because you want to pay attention to the can. There's nothing worse than spending 5 hours putting together a bunch of models, cleaning up the mold lines, doing all that kind of stuff. Unless you don't do that, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
Going outside to spray it in 101 degrees and then it all comes out like little sand all over your models. And it's happened to us all, right?
It's all happened to everybody. And you always see a post online on miniature painting or something, and it's like, what happened? And then someone is going to explain what you did.
Sprayed
Someone
too
has to
far
tell
away. You sprayed it when it was too hot. You used
cold.
old
Humidity,
Corax white.
Right, something.
Yeah.
And that is a rite of passage.
Yeah.
It is our coming of age as a painter.
Yeah.
Messing up the primer.
In fact, primers are almost... We didn't talk about GW primers at all. I think, in my opinion, GW has some of the best primers out there.
I love
their
Rage
black
Bone
primer.
and I love Gray Seer.
Rips.
And they're
And
white.
Chaos Black.
And they're brand new white. The white
Really?
the white scar.
You're right. I've been
the
using
same-
white scar on Votan.
It's the brand new white that is the exact...
That's the base color I use.
Oh, sweet.
It's the same as they do for Wraithbone and Gray Seer. The problem is they're just really expensive.
They are. It was like 25.
They are
a
quite
bottle.
expensive, yeah.
Yeah. But they're my favorite spray cans right now. We do have a bunch to test. We have like a bunch of Tamiya and other like Mr. Hobby and a bunch of other Vallejo to actually test. But from what I've sprayed so far, before testing all the Japanese brands and stuff like that, that's been my favorite primer. Sorry.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
So what else about Monument, my friend?
So continuing on, you do have to follow that direction and steps. You through an airbrush, it's amazing. Like all that blue. I the first one I did, which was the missile launcher man, I did it with my hand like brush just to get the blue on. Then I thought like, well, let's try it through the airbrush. Incredible. Incredible, man. Like the time it saves, I was done getting all the base colors in like a night. Easy. It plays well with itself. It doesn't love Vallejo, which I used to blend some of the blue. Like some of the sharper highlights was a mix of blends with the, I forget which Vallejo blue. It's one of the newer ones. And that one didn't like working 100% on the lightning bolts, because lightning bolts are three colors blended in different steps to get it, and they didn't always like to play together. So you had to be like, all right, I blended it, then it kind of broke apart, had to do it again. So there's that. It doesn't always play nice, but with itself, it loves itself. I can blend it all day. In fact, that's what I was doing for a while.
And then sometimes, like with Monument, if you like a wet palette, or if you don't use a wet palette, you don't have to worry about it breaking, but it is going to dry on your palette faster, and then it's going to function differently on your model because it's no longer wet. It's going to dry faster.
And you have to remake it or something, reapply it, and it's kind
or
of
you're going to see brush strokes or so forth. That's why you use a wet palette, is so that everything continually functions normally.
Right, you have a flow, and that's something I want to pull up.
Also, not a good dry brush paint.
Yeah, I actually never use it for dry brush. I think it's a little too wet.
I don't dry brush much. So.
Well, there you go. I think it's too wet for that. I actually think GW makes like a great.
You got some good
one
stuff
for dry brushing. Actually,
yeah.
I think theirs is probably
and
the
Army
one
Painter.
I haven't tried Army Painters yet, but I love GW through. And this is specifically pot, because I have versions where I bought where someone makes the bottles, and those have more medium in it to make it flow, and they're not as good in my opinion as the pot one. Out of the pot, I think the dry brush is beautiful. Like I would stick with that hands down for me, because it's thick. It's thick and it colors. And where these guys, not so much. Not a problem. That's what we have different paints for.
Yeah.
But I don't think, in my conclusion, after using metallics and everything, and I should mention out, I love their shades. I don't know what it is. It doesn't break. It does the tinting, and it does it pretty smoothly without even using their medium. And their medium is designed for their metallics. It's not even designed for their shades. So,
Is that the Noosh? The Noosh stuff?
The newer, it's been around.
No, it's called Noosh.
Oh, Noosh?
Their brand new Noosh medium?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's cool. But this is a paint range that is...
Aren't these your favorite shades?
Some of them.
Like,
yeah.
no. You like the shades.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Their
washes
black
and stuff?
Their black wash and their brown wash. I haven't tried the brown wash yet, but the black wash was like, why would I ever use Nuln Oil?
Really?
Ever again?
This dude will not be quiet about it.
Yeah, not at all.
I will say my favorite black wash was the gloss Nuln Oil, and they got rid of it.
They do not have it.
Yeah, I used to put it over my chrome Necrons. I'd spray my Necrons with an enamel chrome color,
that
and
makes
then
sense.
I would put a gloss Nuln Oil over them because it fell into the shadows real nice. Unfortunate.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So in conclusion with this, after using their metallics and stuff, which I think the metallics are a little thick at times, so it's not as smooth, but I still like the color. So like when you look at any of the metals,
God, your magnets are strong.
They are. Magna Baron, baby.
Yep.
Been working.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored. We just I just used to work for him, and I have a surplus of magnets I've had for years.
Infinite magnets.
Not infinite. They'll eventually run out. I'm actually close.
Really?
I've given them away to friends who are like, hey, I want to magnetize.
That makes sense.
Here you go. I was feeling charitable. Anyways, the metallics on there, I'm actually not using their gold. I'm using their bronze. And I'm using a different gold they have to highlight it to make it appear like gold, which is a weird technique that I learned from our buddy Dylan. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. He taught Alex,
nice.
and then Alex told me. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to do that.
It's very desaturated, where
Yeah.
it doesn't look too goofy.
Which it
I like
should
it.
on
Next
Night
to
Lords
blue.
because they're supposed to have like
Yes.
really old stuff.
Yeah,
I think it works very well.
I want to do something like this for my vet guards, like grenades and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like a desaturated,
Metal,
bronzy,
right?
goldish metal.
Which, if
Yeah,
you
it
look
really
at the
fits.
metallics, that's what their wash kind of does at times, and then you just use their bright silver to bring it up, right? And again, I don't think their metallics are my absolute end all favorite, but they're good enough.
Yeah.
They're good enough if you have it for the range. I think they're good enough.
Okay.
Let's see. I think their blue is phenomenal. I think I'm throwing away on my other blues. I don't think I found a blue right now that is. I haven't tried the Rogue Hobby Ultramarine blue, but I want to see like how saturated, because her style of painting is already super saturated.
Very bright.
Yes.
And you have to still watch the blue episode because
It's on.
you'll
the way.
you'll have to see how Monument does on our blue episode.
Yes. And I love their blues. So in conclusion, let's get to the conclusion. Sorry, just kidding. One more tangent. That gold on top of the icon guy, that is a GW wash. That is Reichen Flesh Shade over their metallic.
Okay.
Which actually comes out nice. It does dull it more, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with it being dulled out. You can pick it up from the middle and that's what I usually do is I'll pick up middle and then slightly twist. Yeah, it is dulled out and then it's been re-highlighted with their gold to be just like more worn out metals because that's what they should have, right? That's their style.
You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are beautiful.
So in conclusion, I think this is a higher level paint range, something you probably wouldn't buy right away because you need to have these other tools, or it really helps if you have other tools.
I think the single pigment in Monument makes it a harder paint range like Scale 75 to function correctly as you're using it. So if this is your first paint range you're picking up, like we have a couple friends who went out and just purchased the whole range of Monument and they're having a really difficult time with it until they started watching some of the Monument Hobbies and they're like, oh, this is just a normal thing. I'm not just dumb. You know?
Right.
Like, you know,
I went through
seriously.
it too.
Yeah,
definitely. And I was
definitely.
like, am I a bad painter? Like, what's going on?
The first time I ever used Monument Hobbies paints was I won like 6 of them at one of your guys' events. And I was like,
baby.
oh, cool. Look at all these awesome paints. These are really fun. Like, these are really punchy colors, but they were just not the same as a GW paint, or I used a lot of Reaper paints too.
They're not
back then.
They're not as beginner friendly.
Yeah,
No,
they're not
no,
as
no.
beginner
This
friendly,
is an
but
advanced paint.
the colors specifically are fantastic. Like, they're beautiful. They have a lot of really good grays. Like, a lot of their grays have a
grays
ton
was
of
something I've been
ton of
into.
color to them. Like, a lot of things that are normally desaturated have a lot of really vibrant color. Like, they have a bit of green to them or a bit of blue, and you can use that specifically for painting non-metallic metal as a great base tone or as the darkest point to then work up from to have a kind of a bluish cold steel. Something like their Payne's Gray works really well for that.
That's like Flame on Miniatures thing now. Like,
Yeah.
he has his set for that.
Okay. Shout out to Alex Popov. He's been using that to paint non-metallic metal recently.
And it's coming out nice.
I have to just buy the set, the Flame On's Gold set.
It's a really good set. And
it looks really good.
And remember, his isn't actually metallics. It's all non-metallic stuff,
yes.
which is what makes it so cool.
Yes. Yeah, it's awesome. I love the Monument Hobbies paints.
Don't forget the transparents. I used some of
haven't used any
their
of those.
transparents and their what's the other fluorescent. So on the dude.
Oh,
what's his
I was
name?
about to ask.
Yeah,
I was about to ask what
He needs
what
to,
is on
he needs
that.
to know this
Yeah,
color
I-
recipe, G. Why don't
I
you tell him? So
desperately
if you
need
look,
to know.
If you look on G, what's your
This is
Instagram?
so cool.
You can find it on wargaming_studios. It'll also be under the squad_games_entertainment on Instagram, where you will find these.
Yeah.
This is my favorite part of the entire
It's the green is
set.
honestly when I made that I was
so-
like,
it's
oh.
so cool.
All right, so this is a blend. Since you asked,
I need to know.
all right. So I started with the white. You start with white.
You got to.
Yep, I went with the
You
white.
got to.
I did the bold titanium white. Then I used their transparent green to just get the color, and I had to use about 2 coats.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
it does do the thing where it's like it kind of works sort of like a wash. So I wanted to make sure I had the coverage. Then I used that, and I blended it in with moot green.
Oh.
So this is where I was finding out
Okay.
they kind of like to play nice with a few, and that was one that worked.
Really?
And then I did that, and then what I built up from there was I used a little bit of Vallejo's ivory. Yeah, no, there's another one that's very similar to ivory.
Ice yellow?
Yes,
I love
and I
ice
added the
yellow.
yellow just so you can get like it's gonna turn like yellow at the bottom,
Uh-huh.
and that's how the goop was made.
Yeah.
And
Oh, it
then-
looks so
then I just added
good.
Some white for a little bit of highlighting on the blade where it follows the blade, and that's it.
Yeah, Vallejo Ice Yellow is legit.
There.
The OG.
And that was him. You know, that's how the green was made. And I love the green because it's very like it feels like a poison, and that's what it should be. He has a
Looks
poison.
like ooze from
Like
Teenage
an
Mutant
ooze.
Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
I love it.
So they made
Really
some
good.
really good transparents and some good fluorescents, which I think Rob used. No, he used the high flow.
Yeah.
He used high flow. Never mind.
So for my experience with Monument Hobby paints is that I am a really big fan of their paints. I'm going to echo what these 2 gentlemen have said. I love their saturation in their paints. Some of they go through an airbrush great. There are some paints that just straight replace Games Workshop paints. They're warm gray. I think it's called bright warm gray. Like replaced my Uthwin gray.
Okay.
Right. And like anything that I can replace with GW paints from Monument Hobbies paint, I will do. Because of an airbrush. Or just because like I don't mind having to do multiple coats because if I like the hue of a color, right? If I can do it less, that's the one thing that I really like about Hobby Highlander is that we can find the perfect yellow paint that does what we want, that everyone wants an actual yellow to do in one coat. And it's phenomenal, right? Like, or the same thing with, it's what colors have we released? White, you know, like the white
gold,
paint.
Right? Oh, gold.
Gold, white, silver, black, and blue will hopefully come out
pretty soon.
Very soon. But
we keep saying that.
we do. But
Times,
like it's crazy how we can like sometimes find a paint that just will replace a paint from any other range. Monument has done that for me on multiple things. Sometimes we experience problems with Monument Hobbies in Hobby Highlander because we don't know it's the Monument. So we put it on the wet palette, instantly breaks. But guess what? Sometimes it doesn't.
Right. Sometimes
I'm like, oh, obviously this is Monument,
and then totally not.
We're wrong, and we're like, oh, Monument. Okay, wow, you know, and it's just like it's crazy how some of their paints have a different chemical composition to hold their pigment in a different way that ultimately just make it a fantastic paint. I will say that some of the negatives I have about it is that the Monument paint range has some of the worst paints we have ever tested.
There's some that are real bad, like with our white episode.
Yeah, they have one white, which is that is the best paint, one of the best paints in all of miniature painting for white, one of. And then they have one of the worst paints.
In our opinion.
Their heavy, bold titanium white was one of the worst paints.
We hated working with it because maybe it was a great color, but at the end of the day, if I have so much trouble working with this and I don't love the color enough to make it work,
you gotta get it out of there.
Exactly.
It's getting tossed.
It's getting tossed. Like I'm
it's
not
too
using
much.
it again.
It's too much effort
for a little thing.
Yeah, good thing I painted it. I'm not going to toss it.
I'm excited to see the yellow one.
You know, but like the idea is maybe you don't buy it again in the future.
Yeah. I think I've liked almost every single one of their paints I've used, except for I think it's golden yellow. I'm a golden yellow hater, a despicable color.
This man.
I'm not going to comment because
if
golden yellow isn't our yellow episode.
If golden yellow wins, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry. I'm going to sit in front of my phone and I'm going to cry.
He's going to call us up, guys. I'm never showing up to your events again. Click.
Yeah, you guys are dumb. You know?
I'm out.
Yeah, so like Monument has, I don't think they have a consistency issue because when I'm looking at one of their paints and I'm testing it or I'm using it, I really liked it to have some sort of coverage, and some of their paints just don't work correctly, or they're too single pigment and they went too far on one end, and it's just not my favorite color.
Right.
It's not my favorite hue. I don't want to spend 2 hours making the color work when I could just go to a different paint range, which does something similar, and I get a better result faster.
An easier result too.
Yeah.
And but also the colors that do work are incredible.
Yeah,
like
when they work.
There's
the blue and the red.
Yeah.
When they work.
For instance,
there's some I'll never give up. There's a pink here. I think it's magenta that I use on a lot of stuff. Yeah,
magenta's incredible.
I don't think I'll ever use another pink. You can darken that. You can lighten it.
The purples are
awesome.
amazing.
The purples are so good.
Mm-hmm. The royal purple, one of my favorites.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So So there's some definite like standards in that paint range, and that's like if I'm looking for a specific super saturated color, if I haven't found a better one, I'm probably going to Monument, and even though I've tested some paints that I really just dislike from the range, that's not a big deal. Like will I ever actively seek to use their metallics? In my opinion, no, because I like a different type of metallic and I like a different metallic. But, Giacomo likes their metallics, so you have to test it out yourself specifically.
They're harder to work with.
They are harder to work with.
I understand that, and I'm willing to put the work.
Sometimes it takes a double coat.
Like
I think
metallics. Personally, I think their silver, the dark silver, replaced lead belcher.
The dark silver.
I don't think I'm going back to lead belcher again.
Yeah.
Outside of models that already have that color, so I have to keep consistent. But otherwise, I don't think I'm going back to lead belcher.
I usually use it under lead belcher. They have like a really dark silver that is like the same color as GW Iron Warriors. Or I think it's Iron Warriors. And I really like that paint. And usually I put the lead belcher on top.
Okay.
I want to really, as like a highlight.
Okay.
I want a
Okay,
really
that's an
dark
interesting
silver.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I really
I
like that paint. It is a weird consistency though.
Yeah.
And it comes out and you're like, oh,
I
very
have to kind of
strange.
thin it a little bit,
So-
and then I
Yes.
apply.
You're like, this is like whatever metallic flakes they're using in it with whatever their like medium is
so typically they're going to
strange.
use actual metallic flakes, so
Yeah.
actual aluminum flakes. So
Yep.
please don't put metallic metals in your mouth. When I paint and
I can't
lick
comment on that
I lick
one.
a lot of brushes, right?
Can't
It's a paint
comment.
liquor.
I am
Which
a
is
paint
nothing wrong
licker,
you
but
say, but-
Same.
you actively have to stay away from metallic paints because they actually have flakes of metal in them,
Poison.
or
You're
they have
literally
mica powder.
poison. Yeah.
You know,
I've
both
been
not good
poisoning
for you.
myself.
And you shouldn't
clearly.
use your nice brushes on it. I do anyways.
Oh, that
But
I
that's
try to
'cause
that I
I'm
try to
I'm a
avoid.
maintenance man. Like as soon as it's done, it's like it's got to get clean.
Yeah, Giacomo's over here fucking
I've been using the same one
Cleaning.
to paint 3 teams.
cleaning.
And it hasn't
Man.
died yet. There was a point because I was trying to use monument brushes as a small tangent
On this team?
for highlights.
ju-
I did in the beginning.
Okay.
I did in the beginning.
We have a
monument
Hobby
brushes.
Highlander long form episode that we are working on to find the best
brush.
paintbrush
Whoa.
range. And so we've been testing paintbrushes. I don't clean my brushes nearly as much as Giacomo, but I still clean them after every session.
That's what you should do.
And so I've started with specifically with GW brushes and monument brushes. You're doing Artist Opus and Monument so far, and we're going to work our way through and give our feedback after we paint all these teams.
I got to pick up Army Painter again because I want to know if they changed it up. Because Army Painters before they had they always had the names too, like the eye or something, like the really weird ones, and I didn't like them. So I'm willing to try them again just to see what happens.
Yeah,
Just for
well,
the test.
sometimes it's hard to beat Army Painter brushes because they're so cheap.
They're so cheap, and I get why people buy them. They're cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like another price factor. Price is a factor
Price
that
does
you're
factor
moving
in for
into.
your hobby. How can you afford it? Right?
Yeah,
What
so
do you do?
Monument is a great range, but for this episode, would I suggest it to you or to a brand new painter? Only if you're looking for a challenge to make a really good paint range look amazing. These paints can elevate you a lot, but I don't think I could suggest it to be like my wife is a Monument stan. She has
She loves
nothing
it. She
but
has the big
Monument,
old thing
right?
of Monument.
And she's like learning how to paint, and I'm like, yo, you could. And she's like, I don't care. Shut up. I'm like, all right.
All right, it's gonna be harder. But
I will say if you could for monument paints use it as like a splash into whatever your like standard paint range is, because some of the stuff you won't get anywhere but at a monument paint, and you'll look at it and be like, man, I need that color to whatever be like
Rogue Hobbies, the new blood orange, is like the new Wild Rider red.
I love
really.
Bro,
Oh, I gotta get this.
Wait, just
Oh
wait.
no.
You put
Here we
Tale
go.
of Painters did this. He was like, "Here's Wild Rider red. This is one of the paint colors I love."
I love
and
Wild-
then he
yeah.
put the brand new one,
The one-
from her on it. It's thinner.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
mention
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It-
yeah.
You
It's
have
thinner.
to do multiple coats.
Yes.
Well, you're doing
Must
that
do
anyway.
multiple
But the
coats.
Yeah.
hue of that paint is worth
Really?
it.
See those reds? That's what it is.
It makes
Okay.
That's how it builds up to
it
that
makes the
color.
Wild Rider red look muted. It makes it look like a muted red
I
color.
don't know if you can even see the reds on there. Like on a scope, on the back of the Visionary's backpack.
Yo.
That's
On the scope?
Yeah.
Where you saw the scope, all that is used with that color. I love Wild Rider.
It's beautiful.
And that used
I love
to
Wild
sit
Rider
on the
red.
desk.
Yeah.
This has replaced it.
Yeah, so for
It is
me,
thinner though.
Monument
Whoa.
is
Okay,
a
okay.
specific color range, much like Games Workshop. You pick specific colors up. You don't spend the thousands of dollars or $1,000 to buy the entire set.
Right when they sell those bundles, if you got the money, go ahead.
Yeah, if you got the
not,
money, why are you
otherwise-
watching this show? Just buy them all.
Right. Pick and
just
choose
do it.
whatever you want. I mean, I guess you're watching this right now just for advice.
Yeah.
Which as we do Hobby Highlander, we'll get more into detailing for colors. Here, this is just the overall. So I would also agree with you. I don't think I would recommend this as your first paint, even though now they're becoming more accessible because they're in more, they're in game stores.
Yes.
You're not going to really find this in hobby stores. Right?
Yeah,
As
you're gonna
opposed
find it
to
in a game store.
in game stores because they realize that's their market, and they're right. That's what they should be aiming for.
Definitely.
because they works. But I wouldn't recommend this as your first buy because it is more not even a little more advanced. It is more advanced.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot more, but it is more advanced.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now we're going to move on to another great paint range. We're going to move on to Vallejo.
Vallejo.
So, Vallejo is probably, in my opinion, the front runner for this category for this show. Vallejo has their new model color range, their new
game color
range,
express paints,
their metallics.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing bad
that I can really say. Other
Really?
than, well, I'll give you
That's
one. I'll give you one. So the really light baby blue is what I use from Vallejo. It doesn't like to blend well. And it has that thickness problem, but that's okay because I love the color.
Yeah.
That's about it.
If you like the color, you're gonna
make
work
it work
with whatever you need to make the color work. Vallejo, in my opinion, is the top dog currently in like upper echelon levels of paint. That if you want a great paint range, you just kind of go to. Do they have the best white? No. Do they have the best black? No. But do they have a lot of really like first, second, third paint ranges? Yes. Like there, I don't know if we've ever tested a Vallejo paint that has not placed or done really, really well.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Vallejo is such a good color. The remake that it's you look at it and you go, yeah, of course. Why would you not take this?
Yeah, they're black, great.
Still good. Yeah,
they're white, perfectly functional.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Their saturation and their hues
very decent,
on par with Monument. They have their magic blue. Their what else is there?
Their silver was really nice.
Their silver is just magical.
It's
like
fun
literally magic.
Yeah, they're like their bright silver is fun to paint with.
Sweet.
Yeah. Just straight silver.
Mm-hmm.
Their metal color range is specifically what I use almost all my metallics with as a base coat.
Especially the one that the one that comes in the bottle, right?
Yeah, metal. It's called metal color.
Yeah, that
and
one is
I have heard good things about metal
is
color.
wonderful.
It's super, super thin. It covers black super well. And that's one of my questions from like people that just start painting. They're like, I cannot get metallics to work. I was like, oh, well, are you painting them over gray? Are you painting them over black? Are you trying to paint them over like a bunch of different colors? Because they're a semi-transparent color.
Yeah, it's going to look different based on what you paint.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the metal color paints goes over blacks and goes everything really, really well. Right. And then you have their actual layer color paints or their airbrush range, which is also just phenomenal. Right.
Man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you've seen Express. Juan Hidalgo is like swears by him. So
yeah, I think Juan Hidalgo helped make them. Now the question is, are they better than Contrast? I have no idea.
We may find out one day in the future Hobby Highlander.
We will.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We have a specific type one that we want to do where we have where we come into the studio one day. And we do like a brand off. So we have six paints from this brand and 6 paints from this brand, but we don't know what colors they are.
Oh.
And then we test them against each other, and then we say this range is better. So then we move on with that one, and then we go to a different brand versus brand. We don't know the brands, and they're just moving up this bracket. And then the final brand off, right? And then we figure out how it's done, because it's really difficult to be like, what's the best black contrast? What's the best blue contrast? What's the best this type of paint? You know, it can get, I feel
with those
boring.
types of like contrast paints as well, you don't really want to mix and match, because you don't want to mix like an Army Painter contrast with or Army Painter speed paint with a GW contrast, because the mediums are different.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have to, I think that's a smart way to do it. You have to compare the whole brand versus the whole brand, because you're not trying to mix and match.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's interesting about Vallejo though. Will confess I've only ever used one single Vallejo paint.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was an old one. It's like an old gray Vallejo paint. And man, I don't think I've ever used a paint fully through. I burned through that bottle. It was great. It was the only one I ever used. I think because most of the stores around me in San Diego, the Vallejo's always out of stock. And it's probably because they just released a new
and
range.
for
So
a
that's
while,
why
it
they've
was
been
hard
out of
for them
stock.
to
On your way
get out of the
home,
country.
on your way home, stop by Bourbon House of Hobbies.
All right,
Blow
I'll
There's-
I'll swing through on the way home.
mind.
There is so much
Great.
there.
They
Yeah.
have an entire rack of AK, and they have 2 racks of Monument. I mean, of not Monument, Vallejo.
We'll probably get to AK later, but that's when I also just started very recently. I didn't use it at all.
Yeah, AK is amazing.
The thing was, Vallejo luckily had branding already kind of built in because it was existing for a while.
Yeah.
Where with AK, you're seeing it more and more in the last few years of influencers using the paint.
Sure.
Because when I would see them in stores, it'd be like a really small thing in the back, like there's
Yeah.
AK.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there was no like marketing for it. So it's like, well, what is AK?
Yeah, what is AK?
So then you try it and you're like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
like you don't know about it. Anyways, we'll get to them in a second.
So Vallejo to me is such a strong paint range. Every single painter from Squidmar to every other YouTuber has specifically said that Vallejo is amazing. There's a couple times where they have some consistency pop with bubbles. If you use a bad brush, there are some paints that just bubble up
I have
pretty bad.
noticed that with the one I used.
Yeah.
Sometimes it bubbled.
Yeah, sometimes
But
it can have that
especially
problem.
sometimes if you're mixing in a little water, it'll bubble. But you just gotta work it
gotta
out. You
work
just
it
gotta
out.
work it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Especially if you're on a wet palette, you'll be fine.
exactly.
Figure it out.
So, but I found that they have great saturation. They have great coverage. Vallejo is a very, very strong paint, and it is one of my top favorite contenders for best overall paint. Because here's
Okay.
the other thing: some of the other paints that we're going to talk about are probably just as good as Vallejo, right? The problem is that they don't have the colors or the range.
The breadth of a range,
The
right?
breadth, yeah.
Okay.
Vallejo has a model color range and a game color range. Game color is much more punchy. Model color is
Well, it's more realistic because you
More
use it for
realistic.
like a lot of army colors.
they literally color match like
Yeah.
English uniform
Exactly,
for
and you have
World
the whole
War II.
set of
For,
everything.
for bolt action. I got a
Action
buddy
is
who
what I
plays bolt
use.
action, and he uses almost exclusively Vallejo paints
they
because they're
made the
just a
range
perfect
for it,
match
yeah.
for something. And when you're going for something that's supposed to be historically accurate, you don't want to have to mix and match your own exact paint. You just put it on, and it's perfect right from the get go, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and they have a great rust range.
Really?
I picked up their rust range where it's just like
Is it like
you
a
buy
technical effect paint?
No,
No,
it's
it's like a
it's-
box set.
it's like a box set
And it tells you
similar
what to
to the non-metallic metal stuff.
Or
and
they're
it just
Nocturna. I don't know if any of you
Oh.
guys have used Nocturna.
No.
I don't think they're making it anymore, so I still have my Nocturna sets.
Oh, yeah?
It's these
They-
very like gothic colors, whether
Okay.
they're warm or cold.
Oh,
they're beautiful.
Cool.
I love using
was it by
Nocturna.
Vallejo?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Vallejo's
awesome.
Nocturna line.
So
Rust.
I think
Okay.
AK has copied
They're doing it.
them
it makes
similar,
sense.
which I really enjoy. You basically buy a box and it's
Yeah.
like this is skin tone or orc skin
And you follow
or
these
right.
directions.
or
That could be
non-metallic metal.
very useful, especially for something like non-metallic metal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially
Very
for color
useful.
for people with colorblind.
Very useful.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I don't know what I don't know what chocolate brown is compared to this brown, you know, or this, and you just can follow the steps of like here. There's 7 colors.
I gotta get on this.
Yeah, there's 7 colors. Here's the darkest. There's the lightest. Okay, I can paint my gold in these. You know, similar to probably the Flame On stuff. You know, and I'm sure that's why it looks so good is because it was
They have
probably
It's a tested
colors for
set.
them.
it's a tested set that goes through it, but
It's a
other
it's a
brands
recipe.
have the same type of deal, right? Including Vallejo. They have some great stuff similar to Green Stuff World,
Yes, Green Stuff World also does it. Yeah.
but I'm not super familiar.
I've never
we
used
don't
Green Stuff
have
World.
a lot here in the States.
Correct.
I own maybe 1 or 2 Green Stuff Worlds, and that's because someone
Color
had it and
shift.
gave it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it.
Ooh, yeah, I've never used those.
Yeah.
they look
Turbo
really cool.
Dork really
though.
likes to do color shift.
Yeah,
They're one you can get in the States.
Yeah, but you have to use an airbrush
and
with Turbo
otherwise
Dork.
it comes out
Weird.
You need the airbrush, and I would say that's a super advanced one.
Makes
with,
sense.
with the deception of being simple.
Correct.
It's like a donut for those who bake.
Okay, yeah.
Bake and fry. It's deceptively difficult to make a donut at home.
So
Try it.
So for me, Vallejo is a great paint range. There's no real drawbacks in their current 3rd generation for me. I just think it's a really good range. But again, like there are certain colors of other places that I just enjoy more, and I will go to a different brand for a specific color paint because even with how big Vallejo is, it's not like, you know,
Right. Otherwise,
they don't have everything.
Otherwise, every other paint range would be gone.
Yeah.
Like they would just destroy the market, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah, because also like you can like not everyone is looking for these grays from GW.
Right.
You know, I mean like
True.
you can't do that for your stock, you know? Just like I'm sure they can't have like 60 warehouses. They can only have 45 warehouses.
Right. And I mean, for the longest time, another nice thing about Vallejo is they were one of the colors you would use for mixing, like their desaturation and stuff of colors, whether you use the ice yellow, the ivory, or one of their blues, like a pale blue. Beautiful colors. Those three alone, just for mixing when you wanted to go, I'm going to tone this color down. This is how you did it.
Yeah.
And Vallejo is how I learned it. So they have probably one of my more essential colors I need to have.
Yeah, well, ice yellow was their original the thing that was out there. That's like this is the top notch ice yellow.
I've been using the new Army Painter one, but
How you like
for
it?
ice yellow, oh, it's awesome.
Okay.
It's a great
And
color.
everybody had to
the
make their
Vallejo one's
version.
probably better.
not.
But
We're gonna find out.
I love that ice yellow. I use
bought
that
all-
on so many things.
I bought all the ice yellows, so eventually we'll do a Hobby Highlander on it, and then
beautiful.
it'll be a mixing episode because you want to
that's
mix
what
it a
you
lot.
need to mix
for
it. Yes,
desaturation.
exactly.
Highlight,
Yeah.
But yeah,
That'll be a fun episode.
yeah.
Cool.
So, I guess that we'll move on to
Yeah, what's next?
Aka.
AK. All right, we'll talk about AK now.
This is a new one.
So AK is another Spanish company,
Is it
and
really? I think they broke
so.
originally.
I thought they were.
I didn't know
I thought they
that.
were German, but I think Giacomo told me they're Spanish.
if I remember right.
They are European. They're a European
for
company.
sure.
Much like every other paint color company outside of
Creo que
Monument. I
son
think.
de España porque ponen sus instrucciones en español también.
I don't know what he just said.
I think so. I think so.
I don't know much Spanish. You said that you think it's a Spanish company because the instructions are in
That's
Spanish,
wow.
right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And
I had to
broke
backdoor
Spanish.
translate that through Italian. That's how I
Backdoor.
got that.
Wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
Wow.
Mhm,
That's
and I'm
impressive.
not even very
Bambino
good
over
with
here.
Italian.
Yeah,
Like-
much like AK, an impressive paint range. Like that transition.
Beautiful.
So AK has some amazing colors. They have a wonderful black. They have a lot of other good saturated colors.
Some nice powder blues I prefer.
Yes, some blues. Like they're just deep blue is amazing. They have a lot of really good colors. I like a lot of their black grays. I like a lot of their grays, but I prefer to go to Monument when I go to the blue blacks, right? Maybe that's just because like I've seen people on YouTube do it, you know, I have some sort of
that's
biasm, right?
Blue black was in part of this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like, but AK for me has a very good consistency, a very good pot design where you can just
A
like
little twist in.
put it on like a dot of color
In
on the top.
hole. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could just like look at all of them combined and you're like, okay, there's my there's that. You
I
just
feel
pull
like
them
a
out.
Fool.
Yeah, you should.
I didn't realize that's what it was for.
It's not probably, but you
But that's a good move.
do that for your paint pots your dropper bottles. Paint the top because it's just going to be easier for your life.
You know,
Yeah.
that is.
It's going to be easier on your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
I keep buying more and more and more AK paints because like I'm just starting to replace GW paints or other paints with those. Or I'm getting like one of my favorite colors from them right now is something called Light Earth. And in fact, that's what I painted the my Gene Stealers with. I painted them with Light Earth.
Okay.
And then they have another range, another color on it. And it's like a light tan color. And it just covers beautifully.
Not deck tan, right?
Huh?
Not deck tan.
Not
right?
deck tan,
Okay.
yeah. But there's like two colors that they have that I just mix over the top of each other, and I was like, "This I'm gonna paint Tyranids forever because
Nice.
this brown and this color goes over everything so good, and it looks great on a Tyranid. Who would have thought, you know?
There you go.
And it's just kind of like finding certain paints, testing paints here and there, and AK has done consistently really well. My negatives for AK is I really disliked the two metallics that I painted from them.
Oh.
I didn't like the
Okay.
metallics very much. I preferred other brands, and they don't really have like a wash. Their wash is like a
Okay.
different brand of paint, which is weird. It's called a deep shade, and I didn't know that's what they were.
Weird.
So it was just like, yeah, it's weird. Like
Interesting.
it's a different branding thing change, which is different, right? I don't think they have any express colors, but where they shine is in those layer colors. Like to get some of the consistency that you get out of an AK paint is you have to go to like, you know, a Mephiston red, which is a beautiful wonderful color from GW. That's a base color, but all of AK's paints are like base colors. They all function great.
Do they thin down well if you're using them to glaze?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, that's how.
I haven't
So
used it much.
So Master Chief's sword.
Yeah.
Was
It's a great transition. Is that AK?
Actually, that is a beautiful
Really?
transition.
So this
Okay.
is all AK blue.
Cool.
Every single color. And what's interesting is I got their blue marine armor box. And it comes with a dark blue, it comes with blue, it came with a lighter blue, and it came with a pastel blue.
Oh, that's right. They're little boxes of 4 paints.
Yeah, so they have a box of 4 paints, which is perfect. 6 paints is too much. 3 paints is not enough. 4 paints to me is perfect. So they have another box which is like purple plasma. And you would never think to highlight a purple plasma with ice yellow.
Yep.
Yes, you would.
Yeah.
I used I use a very pale skin tone sometimes in my purples, and it really pops out the warmth. It brings out the
Lakers,
red.
Right?
Yeah.
They chose those colors for a reason.
Yeah.
You can
it's awesome.
You can also go with a shadow gray, which is an old GW color, which is a gray, a black purple, and you can go with the shadow gray.
Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. GW
I was gonna say,
shadow
what
gray,
color is
and
that?
it's a black purple.
Yeah, it's
Like,
amazing.
what?
Yeah, it
Not
used to.
even-
I'm pissed, frankly. Why would they name it that?
Yeah. So one of my favorite.
What?
So one of my favorite. I love to paint different. My guardsmen are all experimental, right? So I did a yellow leather, a brown leather, and then I did black and I did gray. And I really wanted to see what a guardsman would look like with a bunch of all their stuff that typically blends into the uniform exemplified, just as just like an artistic experiment. So I did that, and it's obviously very bright. But another thing that I like about doing that is you paint the same kind of colors and you highlight them differently to tell that they're different. So when you go into blacks,
right,
you can highlight black with a gray black. You can highlight black with a blue black. And then you can highlight black with a purple black, right? And what you get from highlighting black in 3 different ways is that you can show that there's, like, if you're painting an all black theme, you can have your black armor is maybe the blue black. Your black
leather straps are gray.
Your leather straps are that, and then your plastic pieces are the black purple.
Right.
And you can tell that the model is black, but you can tell that they're made of different materials.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So, going back to the AK, I think that they have a huge span of colors, and I really enjoyed their warm blacks and their gray blacks over the GW stuff. It's like their smoke black and their ash black has really started taking over some of my preferred colors.
Yeah.
But there's not really anything wrong with AK either. The only thing that I just disliked was their metallics, and maybe it's because I tested some of their metallics that aren't as good. And like similar to Duncan Rhodes Tooth and Coats, maybe they weren't like their top,
their number
top
one.
tier.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: every paint should be your top tier paint. Like
the ones you choose should be your specific top tier paints because you chose them.
Correct. And one of the hard things to do is that Vallejo has purely clear bottles.
Right. So you're seeing
Duncan Rhodes doesn't. So they have like a white tinge. So when you're picking the color off the shelf,
that is important.
At a game store, you're like, oh, I think it's this color. And you get back, you're like, oh, it's not that color. AK comes in like not clear bottles either. So that you can only really tell what the actual color is when you pull it out and you put it on top.
Same thing.
Yeah, the bottles are, at least the ones I have, are white.
Yeah.
Just like flat white,
flat
which
white.
is weird to not see the paint inside.
It's an interesting choice that they made. Like when I was buying this range for Monument Hobbies, there's always the black color and then there's the whatever right on the inside. I was so nervous buying the colors because it had that problem where it's like I can't fully tell is this the right one, so I gotta commit. And I was lucky, but like it's one of those things that you
roll
really
the dice.
You gotta try out.
Yep.
And that's like anywhere from a $4 to $8 purchase each time in multiple colors. So like it can get expensive. over time.
Oh yeah.
So that is a wonderful thing they have is they're very close to what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's funny. Giacomo used to not be a big AK guy at all.
There's
AK
only a handful I
hater.
like now.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
now
orange is one of them. I
and
love
now
orange.
he really is starting to enjoy some AKs a lot more. And I'm expanding his color palette because I have a massive collection of paints.
And that's what it is. You find them, and you find the paints you like. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, try out your friends' paints if they have a different paint range that you haven't used before. Just ask to go paint with them. One, it's fun to paint with your friends, but two, you can see if you like.
It's fun to paint on your friends.
That's fun too. Yeah, exactly. What, on my head? Beautiful.
It's a perfect canvas.
It is. Well, it's not. It's very slick. So I think the paint would beat off. But yeah, try out their paints, and if you like the paint range, that way you don't have to spend like $8 on a paint and realize that it is not what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Just steal their paints for a bit.
Mm-hmm. Like the AK Deep Orange is one of my favorite oranges now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because orange is relatively difficult to get right.
Yeah,
You know?
you can get some.
that
You
when
can
I
get some
started
nasty oranges that are kind of like a yellow that are just despicable.
Which is what
Yeah.
I'm using for the Votan, and
Yeah,
I have to stay consistent because I didn't discover this.
What are you using for the Votan?
GW.
Oh,
So it's gonna be my GW
experiment. Oh no!
This Vespid right here.
Here we go.
So I did a Magnabra Flame, however you say that word.
that
The
a
contrast
paint?
The
Yeah.
contrast paint over like whites and stuff like that, but it wasn't vibrant enough.
Sure.
So then I used the deep orange, which G gave me.
Yeah, let me give that a look. I don't think I've ever seen these in person.
It's so nice.
You can see on his belly underneath.
That is
some
a
deep
great
oranges
color.
and
Yeah.
some of the reds there. Not
Yeah.
all of them, but some.
That is nice.
Yeah,
And the
so-
other side is like thorax. Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So sometimes it's like, I haven't found an orange like Vallejo and Tooth and Coats and all those kinds that don't have a great orange. Like Monument does,
But AK
it's
does.
a fickle. I was going to say a bad word, a fickle thing to work with. So like there's
Monument orange. It is fickle to work with.
it is.
Ironically, it is one that mixes one of their paints that I think mixes well. And it's because it's kind of thin.
Yeah.
That's the Rogue
Yeah.
Hobbies issue because they mix orange, so it's already a little thinner by
Yeah,
nature.
yeah.
Yeah. Except that Rogue Hobby one is
It's a beautiful color,
wonderful
but it is
red,
thin.
Yeah. So
It's
like
not a base coat.
Not
Yeah.
a based coat. Boo.
No, not a base coat. It's not a base coat. You want it to
Is
layer.
it base?
so
I don't know.
So I don't have a ton of experience with AK shades, so I can't really judge them there, and so I can't say that this would be a paint range that I could recommend as a first starting because I don't know. It's hard to find, even for somebody like me. You pretty much have to buy them online, and
Sure.
they're not intuitively branded of like, hey, these are you can find their washes, like they have like a black wash. But it's not necessarily something that I automatically reach for Nolan oil because I've used it for ages. I know how it works, right? But AK is just like it's just a lot more experimentation that I have to do, for that. Do you guys have any experience with AK?
Outside of what we used it, not really. I didn't. Again, like when I mentioned with the marketing, it wasn't really out there all the time.
Yeah.
So I only ever found it in one store.
Yeah,
In fact, that store doesn't exist anymore.
yes, sir.
Gameology.
Yep.
Rip in peace.
Yeah,
Sorry, Games at Your Place. Rip in
yeah,
peace.
yeah. That's the one.
Yes. Games at Your Place.
Games at my place.
Games at My Place. Yeah,
what
Games
it's
at My Place. I forget what it was called.
Gamp.
Gamp. That's
Yeah.
right, Gamp. Gamp, rest in peace. That was one of the few places I found AK. I don't know another store that has them.
Burbank House of Hobbies.
Burbank has Hobbies. There you go. You're right. Burbank
I
has
gotta go to
Hobbies.
Burbank House of Hobbies. You guys are hyping this up.
Like when I bought
This
my
place sounds like
AK,
a
I
Do
bought
they
it in
have
Baltimore.
they have a bunch of Japanese paintbrushes too,
Whoa.
God hand brushes, and other things
Really?
that you can't find in the U.S.
Right, you got to try them.
Okay, okay.
On your way back.
Tamiya
On my way
paintbrushes,
back.
it's great.
Hit it up on your way back.
I'll hit it up. Okay.
So then, if I had to give just
I will say before we go
Here we
off,
go.
the best basing material comes from AK number one. And and then Vallejo. So like you can get a
like
big old
the
pot.
texture
texture
paints.
paints? Oh my
Okay,
God,
I've
yeah.
never used these. I've heard really good things
they've
about them
been
though.
even before they were like really big. That was
Yeah.
always the thing everyone told me is like use the AK one.
I think my buddy Elijah.
Right, and then
uses
some
these
people said
for his
MIG,
bases.
the MIG brand was like use them too, but I've
Really?
used AK a lot. This one I did use Monuments, which was all right.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
But like you used it on here, didn't you?
Yeah,
The
this-
AK one?
Really?
This
this-
street.
This is a texture. They have a street texture.
Asphalt. This is
No
called
way.
asphalt.
and it's beautiful.
Is that just the color it comes
Yeah,
out?
I just put it
No
on
way.
and I spread it out with water. It came out
What?
just
Yeah,
like
that's
this. And
awesome.
Didn't paint it at all. I
Okay.
did put a little bit of oil things on here by doing
Yeah.
a thin down Nolan oil.
Okay. Like
to-
oil stains.
oil stains
like
on
you
the
would have
stuff.
on
Yeah,
asphalt.
exactly.
Okay.
But
Exactly.
I didn't dry
Yeah,
brush
that
it.
makes sense.
Right,
Now
it's
if
just-
I
it's just that way.
if I do rub it, it has a little bit of a shine to it, similar to like an asphalt would. You know? But I
Oh,
like
cool.
the more
you
matte
gotta,
look.
You got to
Yeah.
once you varnish.
Yeah.
Because that's what was happening with
Okay.
theirs too. Because their concrete one, their superfine concrete has the same things.
I don't like
He's upset.
Monument Hobbies.
I'm going to agree with you. I use it. And that's
basing
'cause I've
material.
I
done
have
it,
almost nothing to say in base materials. I always just make my own out of spackle and Mod Podge,
which is
and
totally fine
sand.
too. Yeah. That's
Yep.
it.
It
That's
does.
good
Honestly,
The
it's
problem
a
with that
real
is
good technique.
it does wind up looking the same all across.
I mean, you could argue if
everything.
you use your thing because like then it'll also look the same, but it's fine.
Yeah.
As long as you're making it look nice, that's all that matters.
Yeah, Monument. I mean, Vallejo has like the best. It's just like glue and sand mixture, and you put it on your base and you
And it's
paint
done.
it. I like it. I like how thick it is. It looks good. It's in style. It's in texture. AK has a lot more of like, this is concrete. Wow, it looks like concrete.
It looks like concrete.
Looks like scale
Really?
concrete.
Because-
this is asphalt. Looks like scale
Because
asphalt.
they're designed to be like on a diorama.
Yeah,
And so
this
it's
is-
Right.
real.
This
Right.
is mud. This is this. This
And
is
it
this.
works.
This is dry earth. This is dry
Pretty
light
cool.
earth. This is dry dark earth. This is Martian. And it's just like you buy this big old tub of it and it just lasts and it's great. Big fan of it.
Right, which is one day we'll do the texture paint episode too, which is
Yeah,
going
we'll
to be a
have to.
very fun one. On top of little,
Yeah.
we'll get to that
This is
one
like a
later.
complicated one. There's a
That's-
lot of texture paste.
We've
out
already
there.
worked the logistics on.
Oh,
how it's
you've
gonna
already
work.
got it in.
We've already
Okay,
figured out how it's going to
perfect,
work. So don't worry.
perfect.
And then like GW has some good ones too.
They do.
Right? But for me,
Their snow one
Is amazing.
Valhalla Blizzard. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, just out of the
That's
pot.
Awesome, straight out of the pot.
I know some people will say otherwise, but I think it's great out of the pot.
but
I think
for-
it's on a base. I don't
Yeah,
think
I
you
wouldn't
want to
put
put
it on
that on like
armor.
anything
No.
else or like it and it's so little of it comes in the pot that you really only want to use it for like splashing on
snow
parts
is
of it onto
really
a base.
snow is really fickle and
Yeah.
it's really hard to make look good. GW's is great right out the pot. I actually like monuments and I do like a very
Really?
specific thing where I stipple it on with a stipple brush and then I put this other kind of I also stipple it in and then I use a holographic
complicated.
snow
Holographic?
snow flock from game from Green,
Oh,
Green
so it has
Stuff
the
World.
shine to it.
Yeah, so
and,
I
like,
do
refracts
snow-
the light.
See how that was most
Snow
of the
is-
techniques to get snow.
Yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
That
It's
makes
not
sense.
necessarily easy.
Correct.
But I think
Snow is
out the
difficult.
pot, I think theirs is decent for GW.
Correct.
But that's
Yeah. So I think there's like a bunch of different things that you can do to make snow look great. But there are just certain things that you can just put down and work. I think our final paint brand we're going to talk about is going to be Duncan Rhodes. We're already at 2 hours.
We're 2 hours. We can make this work.
Yeah.
We can make it work.
So Duncan Rhodes, Tooth and Coats, in my opinion, is another competitor for one that I would just offer to anyone. Or say, like, you should start here.
It's a good starting one because they also do the triad thing. In fact, that's actually his whole selling point was like, here's the 3 colors.
Yeah. In fact, my number one test, not because they gave us all of their paints, okay? Because I will say that there is a negative about Duncan Rhodes, Tooth and Coats paint. The 2 negatives, number 1 is they don't have any contrast type paints, right? Which I'm sure they're working on or developing at some point.
They're
he's
new,
cooking
right?
them up right
Yeah,
now.
they're brand new.
Absolutely.
So,
For
give
sure.
them time.
The other negative about them is that their breadth of range is not that big.
Right.
Yeah, it's a smaller range.
But they do everything Games Workshop paints wants to do, just they do it right and they do it better. Right? So like if you want a Games Workshop paint, and I was always told this on the internet and I was like, no, I'm a Citadel stan. I'll just stand on GW and be like,
die
yeah,
on this hill.
Yeah. That's the wrong hill to die on, my friend.
Yep, he got off that hill before it was shot.
Now, I will say that I dislike when YouTubers go on and say that Citadel is a bad paint range and they're just
it's
going to
not.
put them in their
It's not a
closet.
bad
Right.
paint range.
There's handfuls that are bad, and there's handfuls that I think are amazing that are staying in my shelf.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like I think Ninjon went out and it just rubbed me wrong in his video of like, I'm going to replace everything with Army Painter. And I was like, Matt, that's the wrong move, my guy, because
Right.
there are other paints. There's there are certain paints you cannot replace with GW.
Absolutely.
They just are standard. I will say that Duncan Rhodes, Too Thin Coats, does everything that GW paints want to do. And in many cases, and in almost every case, they are just better. They're whites, they're blues, they're yellows, they're reds. Everything that they have is really, really good. Can they defeat Mephiston? Probably not. Probably not. Just as from color to color, right? There's the reason why GW has specific paints that you cannot beat. Sure. But Duncan,
he's getting close. Like the company, he probably knows something too, like that helps them get there. They're getting close.
Yeah.
I don't think they've quite done it yet, but they're very close.
Yeah, I've only used a few of their paints, but they had a great consistency to them.
Yeah, that's one of the fun things.
They're
to paint
very nice,
with.
and I think
they're white. Holy crap! Is it fun to paint with their white?
Yeah,
I haven't used it at
I
all.
love painting with their white.
Yeah, it's phenomenal paint. I will say that I think that like the Too Thin Coats is one of the ones that I have the least experience with. I really only have as much experience that we have with from Hobby Highlander and stuff like that. But I have been splicing them in, and then how well they've been performing every time, like in our experiments in painting, has just been absolutely like a gold tier standard.
They're just nice.
Yeah.
You just feel good while you're painting with them, and they mix good too.
They mix good. So
solid.
For instance, in our black episode, I'm like, hey, this is Abaddon Black. I love this paint. It looks great. And guess what? It was Too Thin Coats.
Yep.
It's what you think Abaddon Black should be.
Yes.
Something Death Black. What was it called?
Doom Death Black.
Doom Death Black. Yeah.
Doom Death Black.
And it was just good. And Giacomo heard me say, he was like, I think this GW. He was like, fuck this paint. It's bad. I don't like Games Workshop paint. You know? But I do like Games Workshop paint. And it's funny because like this is that paint and just taken up to it's over 9,000, let's just say.
Yeah, they've cranked up their paints.
Gotta say, I really like that it does in fact take Too Thin Coats.
It does.
Really does.
It really does.
Works.
It just he locked it in.
Mm-hmm.
He figured it out.
He took the catchphrase and he was like, "We're sticking with it."
And the only time that they don't win episodes is when a paint does it in one thin coat.
Yeah,
because there are paints out there
that
can one thin coat it. Yep. Right.
One shotted, one coated.
Yeah. One coated. But I will
with a paintbrush.
I got this. That's the vibe I got. Yeah.
I will say that they're generally higher quality control range than quality than Army Painter. I think that they're very equivalent in a lot of cases, but I will say that I don't think their third generation paints that are coming out are a lot of pastels. There are a lot of things that they're just generally missing in the range. I'm really excited to see what those look like, but it's hard to say, like, it's hard to describe how they just bring this nostalgic effort to people who have been in the hobby for a really long time. I would love to see them take on like some of the Coated at Arms, because Coated at Arms used to be the manufacturer for Citadel.
That's right.
And bring it back.
Back in the day. And so you have a lot of like Enchanted Blue, amazing blue.
They got to be the nostalgia brand.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad.
I would love to see some nostalgia colors come to their range, you know?
That'd be cool.
And I'm very excited to see it. Like one of the negatives with Too Thin Coats is that you can't tell what the color is through the bottle. It's not a
more muted. It's more muted than it
it's
actually is. Yeah, that's true.
Other side, there you go. So like we'll show you right now.
Yeah. I think on one or two of them.
So this is Cold Corpse Blue, but
it's a lot brighter.
It looks like a green from here.
It looks like a green because there's
kind of does, yeah.
Because it's not a fully transparent bottle, which I understand. Like that's a manufacturing thing. Like not everyone can have whatever manufacturer that.
Right, and it's not going to destroy the paint.
No,
so, like
I also think the small for a beginner, I think the small paint range can be a huge benefit.
And they come in triads.
They come in triads.
And it's less daunting.
Yeah, and
you're
one
totally
of the things about the Army Painter like rack that they send out as standard is there's hundreds of paints in that rack. And if you're coming out here and you're like, man, I need to buy like 5 paints to paint my first Space Marine or my first Imperial Guardsman, you're like, there's so many paints here. But the Duncan Rhodes ones the fact that it is a smaller paint range means if you're starting out, you can pick like 3 or 4 triads and just lock and load from there. I haven't used any of their. They have washes, right? I haven't used any of their.
I haven't
washes.
tried their washes either.
Yeah,
but I don't paint a ton with washes.
Yeah, you're the pigment pusher, so you actually like thin it down and then push
I
the
glaze
pigment
most
to
of my
where you
stuff.
want
Yeah,
to go,
usually.
right?
That's interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or I just paint from. I just start with the dark tone and go up from there usually, and then put black into the recess instead of using a wash.
Yeah.
I just think it gets me a little more control sometimes than using a wash could. And sometimes the wash will stain something that I don't like, and then I have to repaint it.
Right.
Me, I'm a big fan of controlled washes over gloss, or washes on skin sometimes, as well to re-add some
Like
darkness.
shading and under the nose and stuff.
Yeah. I'm not as familiar with Duncan Rhodes washes either.
I haven't used them.
Because it's difficult to go out and, like, if you're just used to a specific, because there's a reason why Citadel is such a named brand. Citadel is like, these are the paints that you use. You get used to these washes. This is what you do. And then you don't really experiment from there.
Right. You're supposed to do this technique. And that's honestly perfect for beginners.
And
I think so.
I can't tell you how excited I am to try our new challenge by painting an entire team with Monument, an entire team with Duncan Rhodes, an entire team with Games Workshop.
Yeah, I bet that's going to be a blast.
An entire team with AK, an entire team with Vallejo, with Scale 75, with Green Stuff World, with every different kind of paint range, and then coming back to the table and being able to look at each one and have like, these are the things that we liked about this paint range. These are what we didn't,
Right.
And we're probably going to choose different hues and different colors. Like, for instance, my next team that I paint outside of finishing this team for Worlds is I'm going to paint a Corsairs team.
Sweet.
With Duncan Rhodes Tooth and Coats paint.
Yeah.
Right?
Cool.
And then he can decide whether he wants to do AK or whatever next paint range he wants to do for his next team.
Finishing with GW. Got to finish the Votan.
Finish the Votan.
Yes.
They're long overdue.
Yeah.
I like Elites
Good.
more. That's generally why. Don't get me wrong. I like Votan because their armor is dope as hell. Because I'm not as a big fan of the Jaegers as I am of the Salvagers.
Really?
Because the Salvagers just have cool armor, in my opinion.
I'm kind of a hater of the normal Salvager armor. That's why I've only used...
Dang.
For like the 2 Salvager teams I've been working on, they're either the Necromunda squats, which are really good as a base, or I got one I'm working on with the Age of Sigmar Caradron Overlords. But yeah, there's something about the
love
armor.
The armor. I don't know. It's cool.
It looks really cool, but it looks a little like standard sci-fi to me.
That's what I like.
Which is fair. If
It's
that's-
like
if
it
that's
has
the
that
vibe you like.
Infinity kind of look that I was like,
Or
I don't play Infinity anymore.
They look like StarCraft.
Yeah,
A lot.
Yeah, and I
they
like
have that vibe.
And
or like
'cause
Mass
there's-
Effect kind of.
They work for that thing because I'm so used to other
Yeah,
sci-fi.
yeah.
More like Marines are grim dark sci-fi, right?
or like
they
Tau
that.
have kind of like
They're
the
super
mecha.
futuristic mecha,
Yeah.
and so like getting to break away from that, and Votan was that, and that's why I like him. I would never play an army of them, but I would absolutely, and I'm
Paint a kill
currently
team.
paint the kill team.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's also a good kill team.
Great. Even
Yes.
just kidding. Or are we?
Hey.
Personally, I feel like Duncan Rhodes Tooth and Coats is slept on. I know that when they came out, all the painters came out and kind of really raved about them, and then they kind of fell off. And then Army Painter came out and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna rave about these guys now." Then these guys come out. It's almost like all of the YouTubers
Who's the hottest of the
online
month?
like go to the next paint range because that's the new thing to
It's
talk
in the
about.
zeitgeist.
Because
Yeah.
we're
It's
all
in the-
trying.
yeah.
We're all trying to figure out, stuff to make content on. So
Yeah.
obviously we're going to. Naturally. But I do think that it's almost every paint range is really close. And I think that it's hard to say that there is a singular best paint range out there compared to like choosing different pieces from different paints in different places. But overall, after this whole conversation, if you guys had to choose one overall best range to just go throw out there and make any potential sponsors super upset, what?
None of these guys are sponsoring me, so I can.
No one's sponsoring us
No
either.
one's sponsoring us either. So we got not always.
Yeah.
They help out though. I say Vallejo. They got the breadth of products. They have the decent range of colors, whether you want to do model specific or game, and they're, well, here's the one negative. They're not as accessible though. So
That's fair.
Okay.
It's difficult. Like,
I have
imagine.
to take it back. I have to take it back.
Imagine if you're going to Kansas. What if you're going to Kansas?
Yeah, what are you
I have
going
to
to
take
do?
it back. In the United States, I would recommend you start with Army Painter. It's accessible. The new War Paints fanatics are good enough, and their speed paints are good enough that you could probably get them. Their triads is incredible for beginners and even for people who are new. Like, you just can go, I'm shopping this color. Oh, here's the 3. Get them all right now. So I think I would say AK for that reason.
It's crazy because like we had a brand new game store open up in Santa Clarita less than a year ago, and they had Monument, GW,
and
no, they didn't have AK. They had Vallejo, Two Thin Coats, and Army Painter, and now they're getting rid of Army Painter,
not Army Painter,
Vallejo and Two Thin Coats.
Yeah,
and they're only going to have like GW, Monument, and Army Painter. And I see that in a majority of gaming stores, not necessarily hobbyist stores.
Yeah,
right.
So those are kind of like the easiest to find in America. But I also know that I think Monument is more difficult to find in Canada. Monument is difficult to find in Europe because they're US and they have to export it.
Right.
So we're kind of spoiled that we have Monument.
Yes.
Because I do think it is one of the better looking. They have colors that I think are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I want other people to try to use those colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say Army Painter.
Painter?
That's for me.
I'm also going to say Army Painter, but that's mostly because I haven't used Two Thin Coats enough. But yeah, I think Army Painter just slaps, and also because it's cheap. Mm-hmm. I think the paints are a little more expensive than they used to be, but if you buy a paint and you're like, oh man, it's the wrong, they're fair priced.
There we go.
Fair price enough that if you buy a paint and it's like the wrong color, you can just put it on your little paint shelf in the back burner and go buy a new one that is the correct color. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just great for beginners. Their washes are awesome and have been. Even back in their old range, the washes were great. That's Army Painter. I can't. You explained it too well. Yeah, I would say Army Painter for sure.
So I'm going to give 2 answers, much like G did.
Mm-hmm.
If Vallejo is readily accessible in your area, I would probably just go with a pure Vallejo range, right? Mm-hmm. If it's not available in your area and you're like specifically live in America, I would probably go with. I'm going to break the mold. I'm going to break our own episode. I'm going to go with partial range and a partial range to make the perfect range.
Okay.
You'd say this was an option?
I know.
Surprising us with this.
I know. Mine would be Two Thin Coats.
Mm-hmm.
I think has some of the best layer paints out there, and I think they mix, they function well. And then I would say mixing that with GW contrast.
Okay.
Because since they don't have a contrast range,
this is your best bet.
The thing that you could do to make it completely fleshed out, because there's no way I can say GW in good faith. I like GW paints, right? But in my opinion, you would go with the Two Thin Coats with GW contrast. Yeah. And I think that makes the perfect best overall, easily accessible in the United States.
Okay.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah. Especially with the brand new range coming out.
I think that's a nice option. I'm still going to stand by Army Painter, though.
That's fair.
It's easier to get for us United Statesians.
That's fair.
Because although you could probably find Monument Hobbies more easily, it's an advanced one, and it's not right away.
Yeah,
it takes a little bit before you get to it.
And if you're starting to dive deeper into painting and try to find the best paints and the best stuff, consider checking out Hobby Highlander, which we've talked a lot about on this episode,
yes,
or Tale of Painters, or any other painting channel, because they always go through different stuff. And we have our favorite painters on YouTube that we follow.
Get opinions everywhere where you can, because that's going to help you decide what you think is good.
Get opinions from your friends, too. They're going to do stuff that you don't use. I have a buddy of mine who uses, I don't know what, I think you've tested one of them. It's the artist acrylics in
Amsterdam.
Might be Amsterdam.
The ones you buy in the hobby stores?
Yeah, we buy them in a hobby store, but they're high grade artist acrylics.
Oh, are you talking about SoFlat?
SoFlat.
Yeah,
yes. My buddy
different.
Connor uses basically only 8 SoFlat paints and just mixes everything himself, and that's insane. but it works for him, and
He's not
you
colorblind.
should. He's not colorblind.
That's
so
more of an
he
oil
could
technique,
do
so
it.
to do that is
He
cool.
could do it. Yeah. But yeah, talk to some of your friends. They're gonna have some weird painting techniques that you would never think of, and you can, even if you don't use their exact brands of paints, you can roughly color match to get what you're going for. And I think to Tooth and Coat's benefit, a lot of their colors are very good matches for GW paints. So you can follow, especially with a game like Warhammer, where oftentimes you want to match the box
reenact.
art.
Yeah,
you want to match the
reenact.
box art, especially if you're playing a Space Marine team, which I don't play many Space Marine teams. But if you are and you want to match perfectly, you can get the Tooth and Coats, and they're cheaper than the GW pots, and they match the color very well.
They
just-
might- then
it's just
they're
a
going to
little
cover
hard
in
to get
Tooth
it
and
to
Coats.
use.
They're gonna do exactly what it says.
mean,
And
yeah.
if you watch one of Duncan's tutorials, which I'll plug, he usually, if he uses his own paint, he'll say what it is in the GW color as well, so you can match.
Which is always
Yeah.
nice because we are aware that there is substitutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that, like, obviously the best case for me is to have a lot of different colors that I enjoy
I would
from
agree.
different ranges.
But when you're starting out, you can't do
But
that.
that's not
That's
everyone.
Not, yeah, it's
I mean,
not
you-
gonna
and you-
happen.
you
It
can,
comes
but
in time.
you
You
might-
have the money. You know,
you're gonna
drop it.
you're gonna get frustrated if you have a bunch of different paints that don't mix well together, or that sometimes don't stick to each other super well, or react to primers differently,
Right.
or react to washes differently. Like some of them have a longer drying time, and that might frustrate you. So good to start with like the basic paints and then
Yeah.
spec out from there.
Yeah. Especially the more comfortable you get with painting,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
you know?
You'll know
Or-
what you like to do and what not.
Like, for
so.
instance, most people, in my opinion, don't really start diving deep into paints until they've been in the hobby for like 8 or more years.
Definitely.
Because now it's like become more part of your life.
When it's
that
like
you
your
invest
first
in.
few years, you pretty much get into it just to like play it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some people who just get in because they are originally artists who get in just
True,
to paint.
true.
And they
then
like
start
painting
to
the
paint,
models.
and
Yeah.
they start to play afterwards, right?
Right.
It's a well-rounded thing. You want to paint, you want to do this, and if you're not super into painting, then you might get into painting the deeper you go into each.
Yeah, man.
episode.
There's nothing more relaxing than legitimately just painting.
Yeah.
Like I think that's why I'm really stress free. I paint a lot, so yeah, it really does help.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the general consensus of overall, and go start painting some models.
I do got one more thing to say.
Oh, yeah.
If you see something, if you go to an event or you go to your local game store and you see a technique or a color you really like, you should go ask the person what color it is. I know I've been scared many times to like go up to a stranger and be like, "Ooh, what color is that?" Because you feel like you're interrupting their game or something. But just find a point where they're like opponents using the restroom or something, and go ask them really quickly, and they'll probably give you a color that you've never even heard of.
Yep.
Or like a paint range you never heard of. Maybe they're like, "Yeah, I used like Dirty Down Rust for this," or something
Dirty
like
Down
that
Rust
you would
is
have
a good
never
one.
used.
Man,
You would have
wonderful
never used
color.
otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, go bother people at events, and usually they'll be more than happy to tell
Politely
you
bother
what.
them.
Sometimes even not politely, and they'll probably be thrilled that you're asking them about something that they painted and are proud of.
That's
like
that's true.
yeah, as long as you're not a jerk to them, should be fine.
Well, any more plugs you want to do before we close this out?
Me?
Yeah.
I'll plug my team, the Cellar Dwellers. If you see us at an event, you will probably beat us, but you'll have a good time doing it.
And you get
Hell
some
yeah.
tea.
Hell yeah.
You will also get some tea, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you're the TO, you'll get a lot of tea
Yeah, yeah.
actually.
You-
Tea.
A lot.
I get
The
tea.
That makes sense.
yeah.
I get teabagged a lot by the
Yeah,
Cellar
that
Dwellers.
makes so
By
much sense
a
now.
One specific
Oh,
cellar.
that's a
Yeah.
good one. That's a good one.
How about you, G?
I'll do my plugs real quick. You can find me on Instagram at wargaming_studios, where I am painting. I have to pick something to paint now because they're done. And if you want to join the conversation, you can join us on Discord, and you can tell us what you like to paint, what you like to use for your breadth of paints and your stuff. If you're on YouTube, you can do the same in the comments. Let us know what paints you think are the best ones to start with. You can check out the Hobby Highlander, like we mentioned, the battle reports if you're into Kill Team or just want us maybe start getting into new games themselves. And of course, shout out to the Patreon members. We do offer Patreon because they help us in a different way, in a more way for us to do events and to run all these different shows and stuff. And we really appreciate it.
As a patron, you should do it. You should sign up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would like to shout out a few things. First and foremost, I want to shout out Aiden. Thanks for traveling all the way over here to make episodes. We're going to use you as much as we can today. You get as much free content because Aiden's such a dope dude.
What a homie.
The other thing I want to shout out is our Patreon. We are going to have a lot more things added to it, especially battle reports, Patreon only battle reports. And then as we get deeper into how to make painting tutorials and terrain and stuff like that, doing more tutorials just on that. And we might have longer form on it on Patreon or less edited so that people can see more techniques. Because one thing interesting, like Torvarion, I really like Torvarion.
Yeah.
He used to put 3 or 4 hour long tutorials out, and they were harder to follow because they were longer, unless if you're really trying to learn something, right?
Specific technique, right?
Yeah. And I see that he's gone more to he skips a lot of steps because I know how many steps he actually puts into his miniatures, but you can kind of get the gist of his painting tutorials, and he can kind of do it faster now. So like, shout out to Torvarion and other painters on YouTube. In fact, I found that there's a lot less painting tutorials on YouTube. Maybe it's because they don't do well anymore on the YouTube painting algorithm or whatever.
I just think there's new models, and you got to just paint the new models.
Yeah, and I think that's something that if somebody puts out a how to paint yellow episode, I'm going to watch it, because I like to see like 60 different ways to paint yellow, because I'm like, I disagree. I paint yellow this way.
Right. And sometimes we watch it to be like the bias of like, oh yeah, I do paint yellow better.
Yeah.
Or like my pink looks way better than theirs. And sometimes we do that. But there's good techniques too that you might not have known.
On the subject of tutorials, one tutorial I would love to see from you guys is a how to paint MDF terrain tutorial, because it's something that I've only painted MDF maybe once or twice, and it's kind of a struggle when you start.
Well,
and you guys always have great looking MDF terrain, and I can't think of any
It's easy.
make a better.
You buy Army Painter spray paint, and then
Okay.
you spray it, and then you super glue it together.
Okay. Well, I would love to see that in video.
We'll show you in the video format. one
Yeah,
of these
please.
days.
I would love to see that. I think that'd be very on brand for you guys too.
Another interesting tip for that is you take Tamiya masking tape.
Oh, the Tamiya, specifically Tamiya.
Yeah, I use a lot of Tamiya masking tape and stuff, a 2-inch roll, and these little
The mini roll.
mini rolls and stuff.
I gotta get that.
You got to get the mini
That's
rolls, man.
awesome.
They're pretty awesome.
Oh, that's
I'm
fantastic.
a big fan of tape, and I'm a big fan of silly putty.
Silly putty slaps. That's
yeah.
awesome.
To protect
So
the
so
Yeah, it's
you
great.
so when you're doing like chevrons, like you can tape over something and then you can cut it out with an X-Acto knife into the MDF slots and grooves, and then you can spray it a different color.
Yes.
That's how you get like really clean lines. I'll do one for you.
Please.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. I would love to see that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this hobby-based episode. I know it was a long one. But this is something that we enjoy, and I know if you've watched it to this point, you also enjoy it.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.
See ya.